not going to give my bio just now. I'm Dara, and I'll be running a lot of the sessions. So let's kick off officially right now, and I'm going to pass it to Valerie.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Valérie Mourou, Director of Film, TV, and New Media at the French Embassy. I'm based in New York City. And I'm very excited to launch the first edition of Digital Playgrounds, our new program for video games and XR creators in partnership with the CNC, National Center for Film and Moving Images. Digital creation has become a major part of our policy in recent years. First, with French Immersion, a program to promote VR projects in the main festivals with the CNC, the Institut Français, and Unifrance. Then, with the publishing of several studies and mappings on XR and video games in the US. And finally, with the decision to include digital creation in the first season of Villa Albertine, the new cultural institution of France in the US. Established in 10 cities in the US, Villa Albertine will invite 60 artists from all disciplines per year. It will also provide 15 professional programs covering key cultural fields and creative industries, notably in cinema, TV series, digital media, VR, video games, and podcasts. Digital Playgrounds is one of them, and I'm delighted to welcome you today virtually and soon in person in New York City. Before leaving the floor to our friends from CNC, I would like to thank our sponsor and partner, the CNC, who made this program possible. Thank you, Olivier. Thank you, Mathieu, for your dedication to this project. Thank you to our team, Dara, our executive producer, who designed this amazing program. I hope you will enjoy it. Camille, Jean-Jean, who managed the program from Paris. She will soon join me in New York as our new media program officer. Congratulations, Camille.
Thank you.
And Lena, who helped us to prepare the program. My last thanks go to the American experts who agreed to share their knowledge and their experience. We appreciate your input in the program very much. And then finally, congratulations to the participants. I hope you will enjoy the program, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about your projects and to meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank
That was
you.
wonderful. I'll ask Olivier, would you like to speak? We can always make room for Mathieu in the program when he joins.
Well, I'm going to say a few words, and Mathieu will add something if he joins us. I don't know where he is. Hi, everybody. I would especially like to welcome all the creators here, because this is mainly for them that we have created this amazing program. And first, I would like to thank Valerie and her team, because they have done such a wonderful work to set up this program to convince us. But we are not that hard to convince, and then to find that amazing staff in the US led by Darag. Everybody will learn and will discover Darag and her team also. We have done that a few weeks ago, and we were amazed by the whole program. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be the same for all of you. You all know the CNC, and I'm not going to spend hours explaining that we are here to help digital creation. We're here to help creation and creators. This is something a bit new in the CNC. This is one of the reasons why we were excited by this program. We want to help creators and to help them have the best chances to succeed within the whole world. We are very proud and happy with our French culture and the French creativity and everything that you guys are doing every day. But we also feel that we need to be as open as possible to the world, and especially to the United States, as a representative of the whole world. So I'm pretty sure that this program is going to be exciting for you. We know very well all of your projects, because all of your projects were already known at the CNC. Those are really great projects. And I'm pretty sure that in a couple of months, we will be very happy to see how high it was possible to bring them with the help of the program. And I see that Mathieu is joining us right now. So Mathieu, I've said a few words on behalf of the CNC, but maybe you can add something right now. But your microphone is not open, Mathieu.
Yes, hi everybody. Sorry for the delay. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Yes. Hello,
Okay.
Mathieu.
Hello. Yeah, sorry for the delay. We sometimes have problems at CNC with the Zoom application, so I couldn't connect in due time. And I can't see anyone. I'm just seeing the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
But everybody is pretty much here, Mathieu, from Virginie and his team, but also everybody who joined in the program in Darag.
Okay, perfect. So very briefly, I don't want to take too much of your time as I'm already a bit late. Just to tell you that CNC, the French National Film Board, we are extremely happy to be part of this program and in general to be a partner of the professional programs of Villa Albertine. As you may know, we have a dedicated program in Los Angeles regarding TV series and writing TV series and audiovisual content for platforms specifically, and it has been working extremely well. So it makes total sense for us to be part of Digital Playgrounds and to be on the side of the French creators of video game and video gaming. So that's it, nothing more than that.
Thank you both for representing the CNC. I would love if Cami, my producing partner, my Parisian counterpart, can briefly introduce herself, and then I'll do an overview of the program this week.
Thank you, Dara. Hello, everyone. I'm Camille. I'm the coordinator of the program. I'm really pleased to accompany you on a daily basis to simplify your workflow. Basically, I'm a creative consultant in the French XR industry, advising producers and directors in Paris. I will be your home keeper, so I will take care of you and to make your experience a good remembering. I'm gonna take care also of the coordination about the flat, apartments and needs. And I'm so happy to work with Dara to make the best time ever in New York. So don't hesitate to ask me any questions. And I can't wait to create synergies with you both.
Thank you so much. We just have such an amazing team, and I feel so honored to be working on this project. I'm the executive producer, and I curated the programming for this event. My name is Dara Danderand, or Danderand, but I butcher it with my American accent. The whole program will be hosted in English, as the majority of our speakers speak English as their first and only language. Some do speak French, so I'm sure that they can jump in or answer any of your questions that you ask in French. But we're trying to keep it mostly English-led. There's this really great live transcription tool. If anyone is unfamiliar, Cami showed it to me actually this morning. I have it running right now on my screen. Everyone should be able to see it at the bottom, and it will translate or transcribe all of what is being spoken. Does anyone have questions about that? I'll pause for a moment. I don't know if that's helpful for some people if you're already using it, but I do think it's a great tool. Also, I'm going to bring up our itinerary again for a few house rules about the program. But a bit about me. I'm a creative director working in immersive technology and multimedia, and I have been for about a decade now. I'm also an independent journalist. I've written for many different publications. To date, I'm mostly focused on immersive and emerging technologies and the creative technology arts. But I've covered everything from film and fashion and music previously, and politics as well. And I work also as a curator. So I do events like these, and I try to really center them around community and education and bringing really fascinating minds together, whether they're participants such as yourselves. And congratulations again to all of you. This is such a cool and incredible program to be part of. but then also our speakers who, most of whom I know personally, and I'm just so excited. They're covering gaming and/or XR technology all over the United States. You'll be hearing from people based in New York all the way to Los Angeles, from all different backgrounds, all different ages, all different parts of the industry. We have people coming in who are investors, people that are specialized in audio design for XR. We have people coming in that are focused on marketing and PR in the United States, narrative development. So this program really has a wide breadth in what it covers. And then once you come to New York in February, we will go even deeper on some of those topics. And we are so excited to be kicking off today. So I'm going to quickly go through this program. Tools and tips. The Zoom link you used this morning, hopefully no one had any issue. That is the link that you will use every day to access all of these sessions. We also have a Discord channel that Lena set up, and we can be engaging through Discord, sharing articles, really interesting things that you come across, questions, we can answer those. If any of you want to share a really exciting milestone or something coming up for your projects or ask for help, you can do that through Discord and of course email. And as Cami mentioned, she will be your go-to as participants for a lot of the logistics and coordination once you're in New York. For attendance, we would love if you were here every day for all 3 hours for this virtual session this week. But we understand if there is a conflict. So please just communicate with us. But please do try to attend and be on time for everything. For engagement, all of our speakers are aware that they'll be making a bit of time for Q&A. And if they don't, I'll let them know to do so. But you can be asking questions in the chat. If you need to ask them or write them in French, we can always translate. But please engage with them. They're so excited to meet you over the course of this week. I don't have to go over respect. We're all adults here. And then in terms of privacy, please take notes. If you need to request a recording, all sessions, including right now, are being recorded, but they are not going to be publicly shared during or after the event. So we ask that if you do access a recording, in case you want to listen to someone's talk again, or in case you had to miss it, that you not post it publicly out of respect to our speakers and the fact that all of you earned the right to be part of this exclusive program. So as a very brief overview, you all received this document. Hopefully you've had time to look through it. But just for today, we're about to kick off in about 3 minutes, timing everything. Participant introductions. We're so excited to get to know all of you. We've read your bios. We went through them in the jury sessions. And then of course, they're included here in this document. But we want you all to introduce yourselves and talk about your own backgrounds and talk about your projects. Then in just a bit, we're going to have an XR and gaming 3-way conversation between 3 professionals, one in XR, one in gaming in the US, and then one who sits right in the middle of both. And then we're gonna take a little bit of a break. And at the end of today, please keep top of mind, we're gonna think about what we want to accomplish together this week and then in February when we have a month together. So just considering all those things and being prepared to engage and to talk. And hopefully you're not too shy, but if you are, we'll open up over the course of the week. So I'll pause there. Does anyone have any questions for the team, for myself about the program? Wonderful. I love that. That's fantastic. We're actually running wonderfully ahead of time, a minute or two. So I would say if we want to jump into participant introductions, is there any team that would like to go first? And if not, we're gonna use the 2 minutes to figure out who wants to go first, or maybe who wants to go last.
We can do it if you want.
You want to? Okay, wonderful. I was going to start just going by how I saw the order of the screen. So you are wonderful and generous for saying that you go first. So we could actually kick that off now.
Cool. So we are Benjamin Auguet and Léa Ducré. Yes. Do you want us to properly pitch up the project? So do you want us to share our screen with some slides, or do you just want us to talk about us?
So over the course of, each team has 10 minutes over the next hour. If you want to share slides from your project, feel free to pitch it. I'd love to know more about why you decided to design this project, and then to also hear about your backgrounds too, and why this is something that matters to you. That helps us, and particularly me, figure out the types of conversations and mentorship we can get for you over the course of the program.
So maybe we can do both little bit of background and then at the end the slides to show the program. You want to start?
Do you have access to share your screen? I wasn't sure if that's just
yeah, the button is here.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So first, apparently I'm designed to volunteered by Leah to go first. So my name is Benjamin, and I've been working in interactive stuff for a while now, and I did a little bit of everything because I like to touch to different formats. So I've done interactive fiction, I've done audio games for smart speakers, I've done comic books shared on Instagram, I did interactive documentaries and stuff like this, VR, XR, and gaming is a bit new. So I did this audio game for smart speakers, which had gaming aspects to it, but really glad to go deeper into that area with this project and this program, basically.
My name is Leah. I used to be an independent journalist. I used to work for Le Monde Diplomatique especially. And then for a few years now, I've been doing more of a narrative design. I work on an experience with AI technologies, AI generative technologies. And I also work for video games in VR. But they have not been released yet.
And our project, I'll try to share the pitch deck, very modest pitch deck that we had. Maybe you can see it, I hope you can see it. So our project is named the Cherry Tree Paradigm. It's a bit of a fancy title for a VR game. And on this game, you start the game with a little, very tiny planet in front of you and a voice of its creator. This creator of this planet is very proud of himself. You know, he's very proud of the system he built on this planet. There is a village where people produce stuff and everything works very well. And he's so proud of his creation. And there is two sides to this planet. The first side is like the village with people producing and living prosperously. And on the other side, there's not many stuff that interests the creator. It's mostly nature and resources. So he doesn't spend a lot of time there. But while he's showing you the other side of the planet, while he's showing you the other side of the planet, he discovers that suddenly and unexpectedly to him, there is a little girl that appeared on the foot of a cherry tree. And this tree and this girl were not part of his plan. So he's very, very distraught by this, our creator. He doesn't understand where this bug came from. So he's a bit annoyed, and is also very annoyed because the appearance of this little girl in this tree kind of wrecks his beautiful system, and the planet starts to suffer from environmental and climatic dysfunctions. So he's annoyed, but he's telling the little girl to produce produce cherry and to make jam out of cherries, and everything starts to go in the right direction. So he's thinking, okay, I can work with that little girl and this new tree, and we can go along the path of progress. But unfortunately, the whole ecosystem collapses, the planet is too small, there is too much pressure on resources, and the creator is convinced that the problem is the little girl and the tree. So we discover right now that this creator has a very strong and powerful, he has a very strong power. He can reboot the whole system. So he reboots the system, but this time he tells you to chop down the tree. To get rid of the problem that caused the little planet to collapse. As he will discover, the tree was not the problem. problem basically was the growth that he tries to maintain, the perpetual growth he tries to maintain on this planet. So basically this game is a reflection on the fact that most management games, like Stardew Valley, you see a screenshot of it, but many others, games where you manage stuff and you build and you collect and you get more money to invest more and collect more and everything, is founded on an idea of progress as a linear accumulation of stuff and a linear progress. What we want to do is we wanted to do with this game is to to guide gently the player to realization that we can imagine something that's different than perpetual growth and infinite growth, which doesn't make a lot of sense in our opinion. So we build this game as an anti-management game. So at first you will play it like a management game, especially because the voice is telling you play it like a management game. So make your tree bigger and collect the cherries and make jam and sell the jam and then trade with other people and etc. etc. But you will always hit a ceiling. If you do that, you can do that over and over, but the game will constantly get rebooted, because there is no right ending to that path. What you need to understand at some point is that you have to go into a kind of a degrowth mentality and change the paradigm of the game and start to interact more with the villagers and build a different model for the society on this little planet. So how does it work? You are controlling the little girl that appeared, and your objective is basically to make sure that the planet survives so that the tree and the girl will survive too. To do that, there is a lot of things. I will go pretty fast because I think we'll talk about it later. But in VR, what we wanted to do is to have this small planet that you can control in the palm of your hands. So if you see the planet fully in front of you, you can touch on one side of the planet to zoom in and to go to the surface. And of course, if you are in the surface view, you can join your hands and de-zoom and have the planet fully in front of you again. You can, of course, make the planet spin because there is two sides to this planet. So once again, it's a very small planet. There is one side with a farm where the little girl and the tree appeared, and you can work around the tree to build a farm. And there is a village where there is a lot of non-playable characters that you can interact with and build relationships, and they will be the key to build a different society on the planet. And mostly the management game and the interaction with characters will all be done through various hand gestures. And also there is an inventory system when you can have a few tools and objects like in any management games, but of course you will use them a little differently. So with all of that, all these gestures, you will have three main tasks. The first one being managing the farm, and you can do a lot of stuff with that farm. You can create relationships with the NPCs, and also you can complete quests. Some quests will be given by the narrator, but they are quests that go in the direction of growth, and some of the quests will be given by the NPCs or basically by the little girl herself once she understands what to do. And the way it works as a game, in a gameplay perspective, I'll try to be super quick now. Basically, you are controlling the little girl's action. You're trying to do everything needs to be done to save the tree. But every time you will do it, at first you will fail, either because the system is not fluid enough or because the creator of the planet will reboot the game forcibly. A new game will start again. So it's like an endless beginning all over again. But every time you reboot the game, you will see that some stuff from your previous games has persisted in the new game. So basically you will find new ways to explore the narrative. So if we were to do what the narrator wants, we will go straight ahead. But since the little girl appeared and since you can do a lot of stuff, a lot of decisions and a lot of actions, actually the possibilities will start to branch out as long as you keep playing the game. And all these directions are very different models, society models for the planet. And what we are trying to solve here and in February is, do we want this game to be VR or not VR, or not only VR, which is a question that was raised often with us, to us. We need to strike a balance between the management game aspect and the narrative game aspect. We need to do a lot of interaction design in VR with all the end gestures and everything. And of course, some narrative design, actually write this stuff, because we are not very advanced. I don't know about you guys, but we have basically this and what was in the file we submitted to CNC, and that's it. So yeah, that's it, I think. No, I was maybe rushing, maybe I was too long. I don't know, sorry.
I'm not joking. You perfectly filled the 10 minutes.
All
That
right.
was amazing. That was incredible. Thank you
You're
very much. Let's have our next team introduce themselves.
Oh,
Would anyone? I'll start picking from the screen. Melanie. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Would you?
Yeah,
do you have anything to share as well? You don't have to.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, great. So
I'll do that now. Sorry for the classic. Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's go for the 10 minutes. I'm really happy to be here with you today. My name is Mélanie Cortina, and I'm a French artist and interaction designer. I'm based in Paris, and I'm super glad to present what I do really quickly, and then I'll talk a bit more about my next feature game called Mea Culpa. So what I do in life is I'm both a digital artist, so I create experiences that are being shown in museums and art galleries, etc. But I also work for brands like luxury fashion brands, and I create immersive and interactive content for them using mostly virtual reality and augmented reality, like for Chanel or LVMH and things like that. In order to do this, I use Unity or video games engines to create this kind of experiences. But so yeah, VR and AR face filters or interactive installations, etc. And last summer, I made a video game. Can you hear the sound?
No. No.
Good. I made a game called 10 Lands, which was based on an album by a friend, and I created 10 words resonating with 10 pieces of ambient music. So this was the first proper game that I did, and I did this all alone. So I quickly realized what was the limitations of what I can do alone. And this program will allow me to think maybe further than just being all alone in my flat and like creating pieces of stuff. So that's why I want to join. So the universe is really was really medieval fantasy, but I think right now I want to do more horror related content and horror related game. So what I want to show you here are not what I sent to the CNC, but more like what were the original intent. So the PDF won't be pretty, but I think it just shows what it was supposed to be at first, what the ambience of what it is. So I'm just going to quickly show the image and then something a bit more neat. So then you can see, yeah, the vibe, let's say. All right, super fun. And now I'm going to show the proper PDF. So my game is called Mea Culpa, and the initial title was Je suis quelqu'un de mauvais qui mérite d'être puni, which means I'm a bad person who deserves to be punished. It's a game about so horror and action in a dark fantasy universe that is supposed to be in VR, even if one of my questions is, with the amount of details I want to do, should I really go for VR? It's a single player experience in which the context would be you're being dropped in a world populated with gigantic creatures inspired from nature, all really, really big in size, inside some kind of post-apocalyptic universe in which at first you don't understand the rules. And what the player has to do is to solve what I called meta puzzles in order to progress. So what I called meta puzzles is are enigmas that works with intra-genetic UX. Let me say an example. The elements which traditionally compose the UX of a game, like play settings or quit buttons, aren't just here for the player. They're here for the character he's playing as. So the player can interact with the UX, which allows him, he can, for example, pick up the word play. Let me show you an example. Yeah, he can pick up the word play and use it. He can, for example, drop it or throw it in order to make a sound and then attract a monster that will go towards the sound and then free the entrance that will lead to another level and allow him to go on. So yeah, this is some kind of basic level design I did. You descend again and again inside a succession of corridors that lead to semi-open levels with side quests. You meet, and for every situation, you have to go through an enigma, which is linked to one monster, very inspired by the Silent Hill ambience, very inspired by the SCP creatures, by the David Cronenberg horror, of course. And in these cases, you will be presented with a choice. You can either just sacrifice one of the NPCs that are near you and that are willing to sacrifice for you to go through. For example, let's say you're in front of this one, which is like called the many-winged angel, gigantic pair of wings. One NPC will tell you that he can just run and make some sound, and then this gigantic monster would just put its wing towards him, and then you can go en dessous, beneath. Well, you can pass and go through the next level, or you can understand that you have to actually listen to what the NPC has to say. For example, he will say something like, I can help you distract him. What you could do also would be to take the word distract with your hands in VR and throw it away in order for the monster to go towards this sound and let the NPC leave. So these are the mood boards for, I don't have the time, I want to say untracked. These are the mood boards for the NPC styles. This is some concept art about the whole city, which is the second level. And yeah, what I want to say here is that I'm really interested into finding out if this is something I should do in VR, because for me, the gameplay would work also if it's not VR, but VR is something I really, really adore and I want to go towards. But I'm afraid that the quality of graphics I'm looking forward to achieve won't be able to fit in VR experiences. And also, what I really want to do is to write the story, because when I create something, I really feel like I have no problem finding out about what things look like, what sound you're gonna hear, what gameplay it's gonna be. But my main problem is what's the story? So screenwriting, I guess, just writing the narration is something I need to find out about, is something I wanna go towards. And one last thing, I have to quickly apologize for tomorrow. I'm a teacher in a school in Switzerland in history and theory of video games. So tomorrow I will be 5 minutes late and will have to leave a little bit before the end. I'm so sorry about that. I couldn't take it off. Et voilà. Thank you.
Also, perfectly within 10 minutes. I'm so impressed so far. All of you are just great at this timing thing. And thank you for letting us know about tomorrow. That's no issue. We understand everyone, here is a working professional and are working toward their goals. So thank you for letting us know ahead of time. And thank you for that presentation. So who is next? Okay, wonderful.
It's me.
Great.
It's okay. Yeah. Okay. So I want to share my my file. You don't see anything, no. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Is it the same slide that you used, that you shared when you submitted?
I don't know why I cannot share my file.
You have the share screen option at the bottom.
I think Zoom just bugged. I don't know.
Is there a chance, if it's the same deck, we might already have it from your application materials. Would you like us to bring that up?
I have another file I want to share with you, but maybe someone can begin, because I just want to fix this.
That's fine. Would anyone like to go now? Okay, wonderful.
I can try. Yeah, me?
Sure.
All right. So I'm Antoine. I'm very happy to be here with you also. I come more from the cinema and art world, I guess. I started making films and documentaries maybe like 10 years ago. I made 2 different feature documentaries, experimental documentaries. The first one called In Situ and the second one called In Limbo, which was also an interactive form in a way that we produced with the Arte and the NFB. And the story was about the spirit who was slowly dissolving into the internet and meeting some of the builders of the internet, some of the people who manage the internet, anyway, creating a very fantasized reality to talk about reality. So there were 2 different forms: a feature film that got later distributed in theaters and so on, and also an interactive experience where you could plug your own data to the film and see a special personalized version of the film that was, of course, shorter. And this was for me the way to start thinking more about exploring basically different formats with interactive and immersive formats. That was 5 years ago. I can maybe share my screen so I can show you a few images to illustrate all I'm gonna say. So let me just Oh no, sorry, I have to quit Zoom and to share it and start again. So I won't do that. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, that's tricky. All right, doesn't matter. So this first film, sorry, this film called In Limbo had an extension in AR 2 years ago that was called Solastalgia. I can send you links maybe if you're interested, so you can see some of that stuff.
You could email myself or Cami your file right now, and we can present it for you.
Sure. Yeah. Let me do
That could be a solution. If anyone else is having issues, we could try presenting it from our side. If you want to email, I think you have Cami's email right off the bat, and she's running tech this
one. So I'll just well, I'm on two computers at the same time. It's getting tricky.
That's all right.
So just a second.
You know, I think whenever I've been part of a technology-focused workshop or summit, there's always tech issues.
Exactly.
But we can solve it together. We're here to do it together.
All right, so I just sent you two little presentation decks and a few images. And briefly, so Solastalgia was a quite ambitious AR project that worked as an installation for museums. And it's a 400 square meter installation where you can basically see real size ghosts haunting a particular space. And the story of that space is that the planet becoming inhabitable, which is, I guess, a common trend. A few people in a community in a specific area decided to transform themselves into ghosts in order to continue living in that area. And there's a big installation with a big light monolith, like in 2001: Space Odyssey, which allowed people to transform themselves into ghosts. I can maybe show you some pictures if you receive the file. I'm not sure. So there's a Solastalgia PDF. I just wanted to show you just the universe, you know, just a few images to share the aesthetics of the project. And so that was like very experimental and very new form that we created with some friends. And so it was designed for a group of 12 people. We designed a suit for them to wear also at the same time that included a HoloLens 2 headset. And everything was in interaction in the room. So the light, the music, the speakers, in the headset, in the AR world, and in the room at the same time. So it was a very complex project. So designed for groups of 12 people for 40 minutes. So very long project also. And what I really loved about that forum is that it's really at the crossroad with cinema, theater, and performing arts. It was really a way to imagine some scenes, keeping the idea of séance, you know, of the length of a show, but really allowing people to explore their own vision and live within the scenes of a theater play or a film or whatever you want to call it. And so that was the base. So we did this project 3 years ago, right before COVID. So we were super lucky. It went to a couple of museums and to Sundance also, but of course the COVID kind of killed the door of the project. And now I'm developing a new project called, it's a working title, but called Mount Analog or Mount Digital, depending on which version of the file you get. And the form, the idea of the project is similar in its form. But what I want to do with this one is not maybe go in a museum, but maybe explore the idea of public spaces. And of course, working with museums or art centers or cities to find the right space to make this installation work. And so basically the idea is that a group of people has decided to disappear and to reach an invisible mountain. They have an invisible goal, and they all believe that because they believe in it, it really exists. And I'm really working now on the scenario, so I don't have too much to say about it. I just want to say that I really see this project as a kind of living sculpture. And the idea is to set it either in a natural space, a park, a forest, or an abandoned area in a city at night or at sunset. Really play with the aesthetics of the ghosts actually and the lights of the city at the same time, and to keep a lot of mystery around them. And I don't want this project to be seen through very expensive headsets, because I think today they're still very complex to work with and also very disappointing in some way. So anyway, this is my personal vision. So I'd like maybe to work with just simple screens with iPads or iPhones to allow a lot of people to be able to see them. And I can show you a little video that we did with my friend Ferdinand, who's the interactive designer of the project. Do you have Darag or Camille received the file? So maybe I don't know if I have much time, but I'll send you some links if you want to see maybe images of the film, or if you're interested, I would love to share it with you. Maybe just there are a few images, separate images. Wait.
I think Dara, she's sharing your images.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I did that. I wasn't under that. So that's not that we just tried. This is really not at all what it will look like, but we're thinking of in a public space to have two different kind of portals of real sculptures that would be way farther, you know, but that would be real, and we want to play with the. Sorry, we want a real object to be the entrance to the augmented world, and this will not at all be how it will look like, you know, the character, but it's just to show you how it will interact with the life of the city. There are just a few other images from a beautiful dance show by Gisèle Vienne that I want to share, and maybe just so you can see more the idea. And I don't know if you know this book called Mount Analog, so it's not this file, it's just separate pictures in the folder. And I'll be super quick, I'm very sorry. Yeah. Yes, exactly, these kind of scenes. So imagine that in a street or in a park in a city, and seeing these ghosts. And the idea is that there is a machine that they built that allowed them to become invisible, and this machine is broken. So what you see as a viewer when you enter the show is a catastrophe, in a way, something that doesn't work. And so there are a few people even exploding in the air. And we really want to create this very special sculpture where you can basically see something frozen in time, you know, that doesn't make any sense. And slowly interacting with them, going closer and further away, having glimpses of some kind of strange thought or something, you know, it's a very interactive way of telling the story. And so basically now I'm trying to write the story of every character, and I'm looking for a choreographer also to work on this project. And what I'd love to explore more in New York, of course, is to find maybe the right partners or spaces for creating that project there, because I think I really want to adapt the project to different places. So I'm sorry I'm too long. I was there was a little technical difficulty, but I hope you got it, and I hope we'll talk more about it later.
Well, thank you. No, it's very beautiful. So thank you for presenting that. I'm glad that we could kind of
thanks.
figure out a tech solution. And yeah, of course, again, feel free, just as you did, to send Cami and I any materials if anyone's having a tech issue. And all throughout the week, we're here to help. Who would like to go next?
Maybe I can I can go now. I'm very sorry. Yes.
Okay.
I try to, maybe I find why it doesn't work here.
Okay.
But I don't know. I will try to share my screen up. It's okay. Now you not see here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Hi, my name is Farnaz Elaye. My artist name is Joy. I'm a French artist. I have a license degree of cinema in the university in Paris. And I learned in the video game school called Engmin. I also work on the video games industries and animated film company like Disney and Ubisoft for the video games. I'm an animator, 2D and 3D, also art director and writer, illustrator. And I have a little small editor with other people. I work on the different projects, like I write and illustrate books, or I just illustrate some books. I even work on interactive projects, like transmedia projects for young people and everybody for an exposition. This video code project was in the programming. My first project, interactive project in solo, was Brash and his friends, the Dragon. It was an interactive book for children. My project for this program is Bluebird. This I will show you another. This is a visual novel. Bluebird is in the retelling and adaptation from the Charles Perrault's tale called Bluebird. And this is an interactive novel, and I want to explore the fantasy universe, fairy tale, and psychological. This is mostly for core gamers and casual even, but for adult people. And this is an important point, that I want to make a version of this project in a feminist version into free verse. I will speak about it later. I have different references like into two games like Along the Edge and Across the Grooves. These two games are interactive novels. I really like the visual, the universe, the text. Florence is also a very cute game. Grace is an amazing game, not on storytelling, but I really love the art direction and the sound, and also the animation and stories untold. I really like the atmosphere and the universe too. So I want to take all of this to put into my game. I'm not I'm not solo in this game. I have a few teams for the moment. Like I have a singer and composer for the music and the sound design, and 2 programmers and a project manager, another graphic designer, and psychologists to help us to be the most correct for the game.
Sorry,
Because
to cut you, maybe you want to show other slides in your presentation.
I'm sorry.
Sorry again to disturb you. I think now we just see like, hi, let's talk about me. And I think you want to show other slides.
I think you.
No, it's okay, no problem. You can show it again if you want.
It's not. Alors, comment faire? Because I have 2 screens and it's a little difficult. I have to.
No problem, we understand completely. I let you continue.
Did you see my new screen?
Yeah.
Okay, no, this is not this. This is. Did you see Bluebird Vision Novel?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. Sorry, because I talk a lot and you don't see anything. So you can see what I speak early on the different concept notes. This is the reference gameplay that I'll speak. And I just want to talk about the concept of the game. The player is a non-omniscient character, and he watches the scene from the exterior, and he had to make choices into the story. Each pages will be different, and each choices will make different way and different path for each player, and there are a lot of possibility and a lot of ends of this story. The originality of the game is that I want to write the text into poetry. I really want to explore this kind of this kind of writing. You can see for the core mechanics to screen 2 examples. This is a video game in 2D. And you can see that there's some checkpoints. I want that the player could be come back into different checkpoints to explore the whole history and the whole universe, because there are 3 branches into this whole story. The branch 1 is more dark, the branch 2 is more neutral, the branch 3 is more into the tale, the legends, and I think that can be interesting for the player to explore the different branches if he wants, but it's not an obligation. You can see some graphics design. another reference. I have a lot of different references. And I think I said everything I had to say. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here with you and to be part of this program with all of you.
Thank you so much, and for braving the technology issues and for sharing that. Yes, wonderful. We have 2 more presentations, and no worries about the fact that we're going a little over time for this session because technology issues are inevitable, and our speakers for the next session have already been informed that we'll be running a little bit later, so no stress. Who would like to go second to last?
It may be me if you want.
Wonderful, sure.
I will try to share my screen. Okay. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I didn't see it. Me. That's the problem.
We can see it.
Yes, but not me. So it's.
Do you have Zoom completely maximized?
Yes. Yes.
If you minimize Zoom, you'll be able to see your presentation. I was struggling with this morning when we did our tech check, so I understand.
I understand, but so I will stop it.
It's okay.
Sure.
Maybe we can all together over the course of this program in February also send Zoom some recommendations. We can all do it together.
Difficult, I can't see it. Ah.
En haut à droite, dans affichage, il y a option d'affichage et il faut quitter le mode plein écran. C'est à droite ou un peu au centre, ça dépend des...
Hop, affichage. Ah, je n'y suis pas. Alors, je réessaye. Ah non.
C'est tout en haut, option d'affichage en fait.
Ouais, mais je ne les vois pas.
Tu veux que je partage, Mini?
Tu peux le partager?
Oui, je pense que je vais faire ça. Ok, ça tu parleras par-dessus. Il faut juste que tu arrêtes le partage juste avant.
Moi, je dois arrêter le mien. Okay. So Jeanne, my game designer on the project. So she will share the.
Can you see it?
Yes, that's correct. The beginning. So I'm Damien, but everyone call me Manny. I'm not such familiar with digital and interactive media as everyone, so I will quickly introduce my work so you will understand the origin of the project. I'm a visual artist. I work since 15 years elaborating a universe, a whole universe around 2 special characters. You can see them here. All my artworks depict their difficult survivorship through bizarre and metaphoric situations. With time, I've explored a lot of techniques to develop these visions. First with ballpoint pen on canvas, then other mediums like shaped wood. You can see it. I came to mural painting with Indian ink and expand the process to street art. Sorry. And recently I went further with tattoo ink. But more interesting for us is my experience in animation. I would like to show you some extracts of one video I made a long time ago. So I let you appreciate the atmosphere I want to my project. I we'll see if it's working. Yes, we'll see. Okay. I don't know if you hear the sound of the video.
No, we don't hear the sound.
It is muted.
But it does not matter. You will have time to look at it.
The video is muted in the file.
Here, exactly. Sorry. Do you hear it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Maybe louder.
Yeah.
There is not enough to hear. As you see, I've always worked in black and white, and to keep focus on essentials, I give a large place for white backgrounds as a minimalist mist. Jeanne, tu peux aller un peu plus loin si tu veux. Tu te souviens à la montée. Ah non, pas là, dans la vidéo. Clic. Sorry.
Désolé, ça a switché.
En bas à gauche, tu peux. Ouais,
Excuse me.
Clic. Donc ouais, c'est dans la vidéo vers le milieu.
Dans le milieu.
C'est quand il est à la fin de la.
Ouais, il est dans la montée. Okay.
You can see I have a small character with its big eyes, big teeth, big belly. It's a funny one with something from a cartoon. I think it will be attaching for the player. And you will discover at the opposite another character, the tall one. Tu peux avancer un peu. Tall one, he's calm, he's always thinking, he's straight and wise. Not so funny, but very clever and attaching in his way. Et maintenant, tu peux montrer le dernier extrait avec la machine à la fin. C'est vraiment sur la fin. Plus loin, plus loin. Là, encore. Voilà, ici.
Encore un peu. Okay.
Other extract, so you see the materials and more mechanicals of the environment. Let's see. Okay. So all these experiments in giving life to my visions, plus my personal affinity for movies and gaming, lead me obviously to the project responsible of my presence here, called Micromega. That's it. Thank you, Jeanne. Micromega is a video game project in 2 dimensions at the frontier between a platformer and a puzzle game, with a lot of reflection, exploration, humor, and visual poetry. I wish it to be captivating for the mind and clever in the gameplay. And it should take almost 5 or 6 hours of gaming. I have initiated the game project in January, and now I'm working with game designer Jeanne, who is here, as you see here.
Hi.
For the storyline, these 2 contrasted lonely creatures you have seen before are surprised by a strange debris falling from the sky. Motivated to find the origin of this growing chaos, they will have to climb flying islands and face huge infernal machines made of dangerous mechanical organic pieces. These 2 characters will have to help each other escaping this self-destruction world and trying to understand its mechanism. In this journey, they will learn to work together and then restore calm and balance between their 2 different sides. I'm delighted that the particularity of this game will not be only on its visual aspect, but in an interesting specific gameplay concept we are working on with Jeanne. The idea is to bring this concept of 2 complementarity point of view in resolving problems into the gameplay. To this end, the player will have the opportunity to lead the 2 characters alternatively and changing the camera frame. By a switch control, the player may use the abilities of one character in addition with the skills of the other one. It will be an interactive way to develop their friendship and complicity. For example, when you choose the tall character, you get its high point of view, so you can forecast puzzles to come and understand their mechanism. And when you switch to the small one, you can go into tight tunnels and act to resolve it. That's why the player will switch between the small and the tall, the speedy and the slowly, the reckless and the thoughtful, but one character can't carry on without the other. That's the idea. In the same dynamics, the two characters have another special power concerning time, this time. Each creature has its own temporality. So the player will be able to choose how fast he wants to act or how slow he prefers to see the world. With another control button, he will use the time as a new skill to resolve puzzles and by changing the scrolling speed of the animation. For example, when you choose the tall one, you slow down the environment, sorry. And when you choose the small one, you speed up the environment. We are thinking about two modes of playing, a solo, where the player switch between the two characters alternatively, as I described it before, and a duo mode, where one player leads the small characters while the second player leads the tall one. And on two different screens, they will use communications tools we are working on. It would be a very interesting way to learn complicity and complementarity between humans. That way, the solo mode is a self-reflection adventure, and the duo mode is more about a friendship construction. That's it. And for the intention of the game, it's the same as in my other artworks. The player will be invited to read this game through a lot of visual metaphor. The best example is the two figures we are following. They depict two points of view about the world. The taller one is more thoughtful. It takes time to oversee the situations, whereas the small one is more reckless, impatient, and restless. For me, they represent two parts of one personality. In the same way, every mechanic in the game, every visual form or puzzle situation will be a metaphor about a self-reflection action. For example, when you have to face an heavy obstacle on your road and you have to push it into the cliff in this game, it will relate the difficulty to put aside the problems in our life to carry on. This is why the entire game will be a huge ascent, like a long self-reflection confronting all personal problems we have to overcome in life construction, like shyness, fear of death, social relationships, etc. It will be a long pathway to a psychological cure. You may notice that there will be no narrator or text displaying. I want that only the images tell the story and only the gameplay leads the player to reflection. And it's important also to understand that there is no enemies or battle in the game. The truly opponent is the world around them. And if we want a metaphor, the opponent is the problem we are creating ourselves. You can see after some kind of component of level design the player will face on his way. Okay. And so at the climax, climax of the game, when the player thinks it will be over soon, we will force the separation of the two characters. After a long ascending pathway during hours and hours together, the player will have to jump into the void to help the other one. It will be literally a leap of faith. So a new big final level will begin. In an endless fall, the player will use the mechanics he has learned during the game to save his friend, to protect the sphere, and finally stop the chaos. So they finish their healing journey. So I'm not very particularly in the interactive industry, so I have a lot to learn with this program. I think I just don't want to make the mistake of newbie when you begin in the industry of game. That's it. Thank you, Jeanne.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
That's wonderful. Also, as a quick reminder to all teams before we go into our last presentation, before our talk with our guests, if any of you are collaborating with other individuals on these projects, they are welcome to attend these virtual sessions. So anyone that you're working with as a game designer, a script writer, a producing partner, feel free to invite them, because we want to help you be as successful as possible. And if there's someone else working closely with you, we want them to take part in these virtual sessions this week. So thank you. And then our last presentation, are you ready?
So I'm gonna, hi everybody. I'm gonna try and share my screen. So I'm Isabelle, and I've been working in digital for a little over 20 years. And in the past 10 years, I've been more focused on content creation. And I've worked on new media and transmedia projects before. But this project that I'm going to present to you now is my first project that I actually write by myself. And it's actually based on a personal story. So I'm gonna get into this once I share my screen. Let's see if I can do that. Yes, can you see the?
Yes.
Great. So the project is called Nanaloo, and so it's an interactive animation film for virtual reality. It's supposed to be between 25 and 30 minutes. And my intent, I'd say the first motivation to go on this format was that I wanted to really share an experience, which is based on my personal experience. So this is the story of Nanaloo, and I'm sorry. Let me start over. So this is the story of Nanaloo, and we're inviting the user to play a role, which is one of the a guiding spirit that will help Nanaloo in her last moments. And it all starts on the day her granddaughter, Charlotte, gives birth in a maternity hospital in Tokyo. So she's very far away and she can't be there for her grandmother. And so Nanaloo she has a stroke at the same time, and she's taken to the emergency, and she's going to be stranded at the hospital. And so the user will accompany her in this last and final journey. The idea, the concept, let me check. Yes, it works. The concept is that he's going to have some sort of power as a passage spirit. So he has a luminous presence, and he can use. There's a change in scale that helps the user go from a spirit scale into a more human form. So he can interact with Nanaloo in real size, in real scale, and he has also some power with their hands, so they can actually comfort her and help her regain some memories. So this is really an invitation to get into Nanaloo's world and discover her past. The concept here is based on some writing from Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who stated the same notes that kept us from living also prevent us from dying. So the main idea is that the user will help Nanaloo find peace by going through her memories and resolving some inner conflicts. So this project, based on my personal experience, wants to really discuss end-of-life care and also therapeutic relentlessness. So there is this medical context across the whole story. But this is mostly meant to be a fantastic journey. So the journey will take place in between two worlds. There is the world of Nanaloo, where we're gonna get into her memories, and so we'll spend some time with her and discover the kind of grandmother that she is. She's the very sweet type, especially with her granddaughter. She has a very caring relationship with her granddaughter. But then we'll discover over time that she had a troubled relationship with her daughter. So that's the conflict that will be resolved over time in her memories. We also discovered that she has this passion for growing citrus trees, and so we'll spend a lot of time in the large greenhouse that's at her place. So we'll discover the character by going back and forth between basically a real dimension, a real world that's between her house and the hospital, and then between this fantastic world of the spirits. So basically, we have superposed, put in parallel the two environments, and by a trick that's thanks to VR, basically we can change scales. And so I'm going to actually show you a bit more in detail some images of this effect and how we can actually have this entire journey into the same space. So actually this project has been in development for almost for about a year now. And so I'm very lucky to have some images to show you from the storyboard. There's been like a big 3D layout that's been built for the project. So basically, there's this big tree of life, and it contains the entire world, including those little more realistic places that we're going to visit. And the entire journey, it will happen in between 3 types of spaces. So there is all the time that we will spend in the tree in spirits, with other spirits that are actually accompanying us as guides throughout the journey. And then we also spend time at the hospital with Nanalu, and then we enter memories. And so we go back in the past in our environment. So in order to start this and explain clearly to the user their role, we have worked really on we have actually done some rewriting on the very beginning of the story. So when we start the project, we are really literally opening a book, which is the tree of life of the Nanalu's family, and then we get into this big giant tree, and then we'll actually be appointed our mission as a pastor spirits. And we also have these 2 guides appointed to us, which are 2 ancestresses with a funny type of personality. So they will accompany us throughout the entire journey. So we basically get inside the tree. So there's this big scale change where you can see everything from a large distance, and then you zoom in. And once you're inside the tree, you're gonna access different places. Let me see. What do we have here? Oh, yeah. I just wanted to introduce a little bit the spirits, so you can get a feel for the style. Basically, it's some result of the study of the character design. So basically, once you're in the tree, you're gonna find your way to different places. So right now, what we can see is the first scene. We're gonna get into Nanalu's bedroom, and then we'll just really meet her there. So she's going to bed, and we're gonna discover our entire small environment. So there are some family portraits, and there are some plants already. So we can see her take care of her trees. So she's going to bed, and that's the real start of the story, because that's the moment she's gonna have the stroke, and at the same time receiving the good news that her granddaughter was just born. If I have a few minutes more, then I'll just get along. So it's just so I can show you a bit more. So once this all starts, you will not be able to help her when she has a stroke because the emergency arrives. So you're gonna have to from the tree meet her at the hospital. So you're gonna be traveling inside this big tree with the spirits, and this tree also reflects the state of Nanalu's physical condition. So the disease will be shown in the leaves, in the weather. So it's all going to be described. All the medical aspects will be described from the state of the tree, basically, when you travel through. And then you progress, and you will meet Nanalu at the hospital. So I'm not sure, maybe I can show you a bit better. So basically, when you get closer to some of the places like the hospital, so you can look from a high position. Everything is going down in smaller scale, and then you have this power to actually get inside the room and get to human scale. So in those moments, then you will really see her. You can look at her in the eye, and you can comfort her with your hands. So there are different steps in the interaction. It's really to help with non-verbal communication. So it will all happen very intuitively. There's a lot of writing of the emotions and the expressions of the character, so you can understand how to interact with her. So but it's all going to be gestures and looks, basically. So I have actually a little prototype. So it's just so you get a feel for this type of interaction. So you have a big hollow that will actually lighten the room, and then there is also some tricks depending on the emotion of the moment that will let you exchange some looks with her. And then when she gets into some kind of trust, then you can actually access her memory. So it shows like this object that's from her past. And so when you activate it with your hand, then you will actually access her past, and you end up in the, let me see, yes, you end up in the greenhouse where she has all her objects, and you're gonna actually she's reliving some important moments of her past. So you're gonna be with her, and you're gonna hear what's going on, and then that's how we discover what's troubling her up to this conflict with her daughter that will get resolved in those scenes in memory. Actually, there's this little spirit that will reveal itself along the way. That's the spirit of her daughter, deceased daughter, that will actually show in memories. So until yeah, actually I have another little prototype image I can share with you, just so you get a feel for this big greenhouse. So it's also a real size part of the experience. So it was just to give you a feel for this. And then, sorry.
We're going to have to jump into our speaker session soon.
Yeah, but that's actually the end.
Oh, perfect timing.
So basically, you get to help her find peace and help her actually pass away until the end. So just to conclude, like, to me, this project is really built as an interactive film. So there's this fine line between game and film that actually questions me a lot. So I would really welcome some feedback on that, and I would really like to discuss it, both in terms of the experience itself and also in terms of distribution. It's a big issue to me, to how to show a project that's in this area of interactive narrative. And also how to make this available to a US audience, because probably this this issue about end of life care and therapeutic relentlessness is also specific by country. So there might be things that need to be addressed, I guess, in making this available to a US audience.
Thank you so much. This was amazing to hear everyone speak about their projects, and I'm glad that we made time for this today, because I think it sets the tone that all of you better understand each other's work, whether or not you actually know each other in real life, or perhaps some of you even work together. But I think it's really important to understand where creators are coming from, both in their professional and artistic background, as well as where they're moving ahead with whatever project they're working on. So thank you for that. And I think this is perfect timing. Our next three speakers who will be in conversation with each other are waiting in the wings. We have Kate, Raul, and Michaela. And I'd like to hand over the talk to Raul, who will be leading it. I'll let each of them give more of a background on their work relevant to digital playgrounds. You have their biographies in that deck that was sent out and that we went over a bit before. But overall, the next talk is an overview of XR endgaming within the United States and where it's going, where it is currently, and the realities of what it means to work in those industries within this country. So thank you so much. And Raul, it's all yours.
Morning, everyone. My name is Raul Carvajal. I am calling in from the West Coast. I'm in Long Beach, California right now. A couple of my colleagues are on. Hello, Kate. Hello, Michaela. So great to be with you both. I just want to quickly say that we're extremely thankful to be a part of this program, and thank you, Dara, for the invitation. I was on for the last 20 or 30 minutes, so I got to take a peek at a couple of the projects on top of what I've been reading from material that was sent over already. So I'm already super inspired by the stuff that's been presented. I'm really excited for all of you to continue work on these projects. They seem super worthwhile. What do I want to focus this conversation around? I invited Kate and Michaela, who I'll let introduce themselves in just a moment, to this conversation only because we recognize that it's difficult to sum up an industry in an hour. And I want to be sure that we tackle a couple of the maybe larger cultural questions, some workflow, workplace questions as well, and ensure that you all get something of an idea of what you might expect as you continue working in the States or collaborating with folks in the States. Certainly is an exciting opportunity, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But we're going to be talking about immersive, we're going to be talking about games traditionally, and I don't want to shy away from some of the realities that Dara maybe pointed out early on, while also recognizing those as opportunities for each of you as you continue to develop your projects. So with that, enough preamble. Kate Edwards, would you mind jumping in and introducing yourself, please, and your work?
Sure. Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I really love what this program represents and the amazing examples of your work. It's really inspiring to me. So I'm a geographer, and so I am a geographer who's been doing culturalization work in the game industry for almost 28 years. I was at Microsoft for 13 years, where I worked on a lot of titles like Halo and Fable and Age of Empires and a lot of other stuff. I left in 2005 to become self-employed as a consultant, and since then I've worked on many titles across a lot of companies: EA, BioWare, Ubisoft, Microsoft, a lot of others. I've also been very active in the advocacy space, where I ran the International Game Developers Association for 5 years, from 2012 to 2017, and I am currently the executive director of the Global Game Jam, which is the world's largest game creation event.
Michaela, hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Yes, like Raul said, my name is Michaela. I'm very excited to be here. I think it's an incredible program. I'm also stoked by everybody's projects. I have actually a background in dance and performance. I worked as a professional dancer for Disney Cruise Line, where I like to say I got my experiential degree after dropping out of journalism school. Once I finished my Disney Cruise Line contract, I came back and finished journalism school in California. And since I was dancing and performing on Disney Cruise, I decided to dance and perform at different theme parks like Disneyland, SeaWorld, and Legoland. So I was getting this really robust education in both the arts as a professional dancer and performer, but also in storytelling as a journalism major. And so when I graduated from school, I realized that there was a lot of humanity missing in traditional journalism and media, and the humanity in storytelling and the realism of storytelling that I was seeing happening in more immersive interactive environments, even if they were more escapist, was what I realized really impacted people and really created experiences. So I went forward to create impactful experiences and create memories for people, utilizing the ideas around nonfiction storytelling and around the ideas of journalism. So at the end of the day, I take any story that has a social impact focus or any story that has a nonfiction element to it, and I play with it in different ways, shapes, and forms. And that can be with emerging technology like VR and AR, that can be with dance, that can also be with just physical work within the community itself. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm excited to get into this conversation.
I recognize that I totally ignored my own introduction besides my preamble. Again, my name's Raul Carvajal. I'm working at an organization called Games for Change. We're a nonprofit that's been, working for almost 20 years now, based out of New York City, hoping to elevate the conversation around video games and immersive experiences that are being used for social impact causes. So that includes games for education, healthcare, but even civic and social issue awareness. It's purposely super big tent. We bring together everybody that believes in that mission I just mentioned, including developers, consumers, researchers, academics, you name it, literally everybody. We operate in a relatively unique space, and in that space and at this intersection, it affords us a lot of opportunity and exposure to different games from teams around the world. So definitely think it's relevant experience that helps provide a lens for this conversation specifically. And I'm a producer for them. I help produce all of our initiatives. And I have a traditional background in media production as well, in film and TV, and have also produced some XR work, both in 360 as well as in 3D. Cool. So with that all out of the way, I just want to start with a simple and complicated question. For our French guests who are participating today, I want to help them understand why they should be excited about the opportunity of working in the States, right? So what's interesting about this particular moment in our industry right now, towards the end of 2021? There's a lot of change, certainly, and I'm wondering whether or not something in particular has characterized the last couple of years for either of you.
Well, I don't mind jumping in first on this one. I mean, that I think one of the things that we've seen, I mean, obviously the world has been somewhat transformed by the pandemic in a lot of good and negative ways. I think one of the positives that came out of it is that we've seen this incredible, very punctuated advancement in how we work. Not all of it's good, but I think a lot of it is good. The fact that we can remote work, the fact that ideas can be formed in the virtual space. I mean, we finally broke through that idea that you have to be in a room together. You have to have your whiteboard writing ideas. I mean, there's a lot of great creative energy that still comes from being in person with people. But I think we've also discovered that we can come up with new ideas. We can innovate in the face of not being together in a room. It's a little bit harder, but we can do it. And I think the pandemic kind of forced us to learn how to do that better. One of the things I'm really excited about right now, especially in the US market, is I'm seeing a ton of amazing things happening in the XR space in terms of innovation with hardware, with software. I think the pandemic really accelerated, like I deal a lot with location-based AR and things like that, as well as some VR applications. This is coming from someone who, I did my master's thesis on VR way back in 1991. So back when the technology barely even worked. But today I'm really excited to see that there's just all kinds of pockets around the country where you have traditional innovative tech centers like Seattle, the Bay Area of California, Los Angeles, Austin, New York, Boston, all those areas. where there's a lot of little startups that have formed over the last year and a half during the pandemic, where people left their previous jobs or they just decided to do something while they were, you know, sitting at home. And so I'm seeing a lot of really cool innovations happening. And I know that's happening around the world as well, but I've been especially seeing that here in the US, which I think is in the XR spaces has been taking quite a lead, I think, especially in the hardware space. There's a lot of really cool things happening that I'm seeing. And that's exciting. You know, there's a lot of things I hear about, a lot of friends who are in the space, and they're showing me devices and other things they're creating. I'm like, wow, how'd you come up with this? Like, well, we had time to, during the pandemic, to kind of think about this. So here it is. So it's I find that really exciting.
I'd comment on that real quick as well, Kate. I mean, on the XR side specifically, right, we've seen, at least over the last maybe 6 years or so, a lot of different waves of this hype cycle. And I was just at a conference, Augmented World Expo, a couple of weeks ago, and it really struck me the fact that, you know, everybody who's in this room right now has now past the peak of popularity and just like hype around this medium, and they're committed, right? The folks that are here are going to stick it through no matter what. So that, I think, is pretty different from maybe where we were 3 or 4 years ago. There are folks who have like seen the challenge and are ready to meet it, as opposed to just like folks who are kind of jumping on the train.
Yeah,
for lack of a better word.
absolutely. I think in your word, you know, people that are committed to it, I think that's really the key word. It's not a fad that people are kind of considering or chasing. I think they are like, this is the way.
Yeah, I think there's a couple points to be made, and Kate, you definitely touched upon this. One is the legitimization of gamification, which just seems very like a long word, 2 long words, but like I feel that even just the fact that Games for Change, an organization that's all about gaming and technology and still making an impact, and Games for Change works among like education cycles, like Raul said, they work among different academic cycles. And I think that that's important to recognize that there's a legitimization of gamifying. And that's no longer like a word used, I think, in a more dirty way. People have always used like, oh, we're going to gamify this. Like people have, in the United States as a culture, has viewed that as something that is, oh, that's like a cheap way of doing that, or that's a childish, or that is going to age your product or your project to a very younger audience, right? Gamifying. And I think what I've seen in the last few years has definitely been that the idea of gamifying something reaches all ages. It is something that across generations, across cultures, especially here in the US where we have such a huge melting pot, that gamifying can be a universal idea. And gamifying can be something that everyone can identify with and can find themselves playing. And I think as a sub point to that, there's a rise in the legitimacy of immersive and interactive experience and experiences. So even like 6 years ago, the idea of going into an interactive or immersive space was still seen as a marketing ploy. It was still seen as something that couldn't really be a place where people could go and enjoy themselves. They were being sold something. But over the course of even like 5 years, I've seen a rise in immersive theater, a rise in interactive theater, a rise in, you know, LARPing, live action role play here in the US, something that was once very niche and very specific to a category of what people would call like nerds or dorks, has actually broadened itself to become very mainstream and something that people really enjoy doing as a whole. And I think the best example of that would be Disney's brand new Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser, which is an immersive LARP-like immersive storytelling experience at a grand scale. And you're seeing that more and more with organizations like Disney, but as well with independent artists. And I think that that shows that people no longer feel satisfied with passive experiences. They want active experiences. They want experiences where they feel like they can take on a role that allows them to have agency. And my final sub point in that, so I can wrap up this point that I'm speaking to, I think is that there's now this understanding that the digital reality, so whether that's within a laptop, within a headset, within an iPad, within an iPhone, that digital reality that we live in and the physical reality that we live in can now start to blend and can now start to layer themselves into one another. When before, the world that lived on your phone or your laptop was very separate to the physical world that you lived in day to day. But now we're seeing with organizations that utilize these technologies, not only for entertainment, but also for utility, right? Like you can go on Amazon and you can measure a couch by using a digital couch to see how big the couch will be in your own space, because the couch is not physical, but you could one day buy the physical couch, but you can see the digital render of the couch, right? So that's a play on the physical reality and the digital reality coming together to create layers. And so what you have now is sort of this perfect sort of ripe environment of gamification, immersive interactive storytelling, and now the blending of digital and physical realities.
Wonderful. I'll add just a Games for Change lens on one of your final points there, Michaela, which is that, you know, we've seen that bear out at Games for Change as well over the last couple of years. As I mentioned, right, we've been around a long time, and I will say early on, from what I've heard, it was an uphill battle, really convincing other non-traditional stakeholders that games could be used for more than entertainment, or were maybe more relevant than some others have been thinking about tackling some of these social issues. And it really struck us immediately in 2017, 2018, how that barrier really wasn't present for immersive and XR. Like so many folks who jumped into this space had immediately started developing work that was not just relevant to an entertainment focus, right? Was relevant to some other real world issue or non-entertainment use case. And that was really exciting to see, like, all this experimentation. And I think some of that is still going on as well, and would characterize some of the work that I've seen recently is some more of this like experimentation that potentially is born out of extra space and time from the pandemic as well. Okay, great. Lots of wonderful responses there. I want to now maybe shift a bit more towards the creators. How would either of you characterize some of the creatorship and authorship that's coming out of this country right now? Be that from folks that you've collaborated with or projects that you've been working on, maybe as examples.
I think one of the things that brings me joy about running the Global Game Jam is because it's a massive community of creators all around the world. You know, but we do have, of course, a large contingent in the US. And so I have the privilege of being able to see a lot of these amazing games that are being created by hobbyists, professional developers, students, I mean, all kinds of people who participate in the Global Game Jam, which is actually coming up at the end of January next year. So pretty soon. But basically, you know, they are all focused on creating, you know, all kinds of innovative things. They're using all kinds of technologies. I mean, for example, we just did a cultural heritage game jam in partnership with the US State Department. And that was a global event, but we had a lot of developers here in the US, and we're seeing just incredible submissions that they've given us over the last week or so that are reflecting their vision of their own personal cultural heritage or the region they live in, or, you know, whatever it might be. And the kind of innovation that we're seeing is really just top notch. I mean, even for people who have not developed games before. So I'm seeing this really strong creative energy in the space. Again, I don't want to overhype the pandemic, but I do really think that what I've seen in terms of the games I'm now seeing today, it kind of, for some people, really was a reset, especially even with creative energy. It gave people a chance to kind of step back, do more reflection on just all kinds of things, their own life, their career direction, the kinds of things that they're creating, and get inspired in different ways. And so I'm seeing that in a lot of games. It's really exciting. There's a few projects that I'm seeing right now, one of which is a new game that's based on a local culture. It didn't come out of the Cultural Heritage Game Jam. It's kind of similar. If you've played the game Never Alone, or if you know the game Never Alone, I did some consulting on that years ago about the small Inuit girl with her snow fox that does exploration, and the entire game is based on the Inuit culture, and it's a really remarkably done game that was done in close partnership with the tribal groups in Northern Canada. And so there's another game that I've seen come to the surface, because I think people are, they feel that now that the people are more receptive to content. Certainly, one of the things the pandemic also showed is that games as a medium for consuming content and for occupying our time has taken an even higher role than I think a lot of people already had in their lives. You know, you look at some of the statistics that show that the average time that human beings spend, the data I've seen for adults in the US, they spend over 12.5 hours a day looking at some kind of screen, whether it's a television, which is a game, whether it's their phone. So that's a massive amount of screen time, and games have started to take more and more of that percentage. And so there's that huge, basically that huge gap for content. What kind of stories need to be told? We see that with streaming services for films like Netflix and Amazon and all these others. They're very hungry for content. Games are no different. And so right now, one of the things that I'm super excited about is that one of the things that's filling the content gap, it's not just the big AAA shooters and RPGs and all that kind of stuff that we come to expect. I mean, certainly there will always be a place for those. But because we've had more and more people who were not game players come into the gaming space over the last 2 years, these people are looking for unique stories. They're looking for new kinds of stories. And so a lot of the people who are in that the indie space, the independent game developer space, or they're the hobbyists who are kind of exploring their own personal narrative through the games medium, that is getting more attention, because people out there in the public, there's a lot of people who joined gaming in the last 2 years. They don't want to play a shooter. They don't want to play an RPG, but they're looking for ways to explore games as a form of artistic self-expression. And we're seeing more of that. And that is what's really exciting me. So there's a lot of great examples that I'm seeing across the country it's really cool. It's very exciting.
I think for me, what I'm seeing in the US is the buzzwords of diversity and inclusion, which will always be buzzwords. But I think there's also been a very interesting reckoning. And I don't use that term lightly, but I have definitely seen there be a reckoning of narratives, and very similar to what Kate was saying, sort of a departure from the AAA idea of gaming and a push into not just narratives that people they think would want to explore, but narratives that they know a specific audience wants to explore, right? Like, I know that there have been a lot of conversations around the race sort of dynamic in the US. There's been a lot of conversations around LGBTQIA in the US. There's been a lot of conversations around immigration in the US. And the way certain people want to be able to better understand these things from themselves, but also better spread these sort of impact social justice-based ideas is through avenues like gaming, or it's through avenues like VR and AR. And that is, to me, like a reckoning of narratives, like pulling the narrative away from what we've seen as like a traditional American narrative, right? Like telling sort of the underground version or the not as popular version of certain ideologies that we here in the US have been told over and over again is just the standard narrative around us and who we are as a culture. Beyond just a reckoning, I also see there be a deep collaboration and almost a hunger for multinational productions. I've seen a lot of organizations based in the US partner with creators who are European, creators who are African, creators who are Asian, companies who are Asian, partnering with American creators. I think a great example of that is Brianna's Garden. So Brianna's Garden is a piece about Breonna Taylor and sort of, again, this reckoning around race and this reckoning around issues here in the US we are dealing with as a country. But that sort of moment in time was created and partnered with an Australian artist who's very well known in the AR VR world named Sutu. So sort of this hunger to say, we don't need to stay within our bubble of US, like let's broaden our reach, let's try to find different types of creators with different types of points of view. Even the project that Raul and I are currently working on has a French-based company, a British-based creator, and a United States-based team. And the project that I recently wrapped was a true Filipino American production where we had Filipino animation artists with an American sort of team of producers and co-creators. So those are sort of the two big trends I'm seeing for US creators: reckoning and collaboration outside of sort of their bubble of being American.
I mean, some of this can also be characterized just from a technical perspective, right? Like it's literally just becoming easier to make games, or at least have access to the tools which you can make games. So certainly on a technical level, we're seeing access to some of these huge platforms continue to see more users, continue to see more authors, continue to see way more people trying to tell their own stories through these media. And, you know, we at Games for Change at least see that as a total net positive, right? The more people you have creating, the more kinds of stories and more opportunity for reckoning that Michaela's mentioning that we'll see. So we certainly see the general demographic of who's creating within this space shift in what I think is a great direction. I wonder though, there's a counterpoint to that, which is the more people that are in the space and the more games that are being created, the more we have a potential for saturation and discoverability issues. I think somebody mentioned distribution, maybe Isabel, in your last presentation, and that's certainly a point that I think I'd like to talk a bit more about, right? So it's easier than ever to get in, as we've said, but then what, right? Like, what are the supports that are extant right now, or the ways by which we see creators really taking that next step and getting hooked up with their teams, understanding how to actually get their product in front of an audience, right? How have those challenges been met these last couple of years in your eyes?
I think what's interesting that I've seen, not just within gaming and VR and AR, but just within creativity as a whole with the United States, is that you really have to form a community around your project. Like, it's almost like here in the US, we do the work to fund the project. We also have to do the work to get the project in front of audiences. And it's sort of a double-edged sword, right? Because it's the idea of like, you save up all this money for a puppy and you're so excited to have this new puppy, which is your project, but then you forget like all the things that come with having a new puppy. Like, you have to buy the puppy food every week. You have to make sure the puppy walks twice a day. You have to make sure the puppy, which is a brand new baby, is going to cry every night. You have to be awake with that puppy, right? Like, the reality is, like, here in the US, like, we save up and try to find all this money just to create the project or buy the puppy. And we forget there's sort of this whole other aspect of having a project, having the project be seen by an audience, having the project be distributed, having the project have key partnerships to the project to help it be seen. So I've seen a lot of people create communities just around their project or around what their project is trying to do. And that can be very difficult, especially depending on the project you're trying to create, but it can also be very successful, right? And creating community is a very broad idea, and I keep it very broad because I've seen some games create a Discord channel with their game audiences. I've seen some games and projects create an Instagram handle so people can just follow that specific project. Some project creators have a newsletter, right? And so building your community around your project, whether it's more grassroots, very similar to what I just spoke to, which is building your own community in digital platforms, or if it's grass tops, which, for example, would be getting the deal with Oculus so that you can be distributed on the front page of the Oculus store for a week, or getting the deal with X or Y or Z company so that your project can then be seen at a festival or a blah, 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 or a blank, or getting a partnership with a museum or a partnership with an organization, right? Like, whether it's grass tops or grassroots, I think a big key part of projects is community, and a big part of community is knowing your audience, right? So if you're just marketing your game, or you're just speaking that your game is for everyone and anyone, I don't think it'll be as successful as, say, for example, you're like, my game really speaks to people who are dealing with afterlife, or my game really speaks to people who are passionate about education, et cetera, et cetera. And it could be multiple demographics of people and multiple ways of describing those people, but having specific ideas around your audience and who you want to see your project. This project is for national parks. I want people who are aware of big, broad environments like national parks to know about this project. Boom. You have a very specific community and audience you can start reaching out to, and you can start kind of working with, and you can start making them knowledgeable about this project. So that's what I see personally.
I mean, like that specific grass tops piece speaks directly to that development that Kate mentioned earlier, right? Like it's becoming easier for some of these corporations or companies or other organizations to recognize an opportunity within interactive, right? And so that yes becomes something that I think more and more folks are hungry for, and also leads to hopefully a diversification in the kinds of stories, not just in the kinds of ways that they're being released or accessed, right? Museums, I think, are a particularly interesting space here that we'll see lots of development in, say, the next 5 years. It's a space that I think is ripe for innovation and ripe for a lot of interactive use case. So we'll see certainly way more games in those spaces over time. As we come to maybe the last couple minutes here, I do want to make sure that we're closing on a great note. So I wonder, Michaela, Kate, and even myself, as we think about an industry like ours, which is grappling with a lot of big issues, right? We've mentioned labor, mentioned diversity already, gender discrimination, certainly. There's a great question and answers happening in the chat already, so I'm really appreciative of that as well. You know, I think all these questions are pointing towards necessary change, certainly. We've talked about some of that change so far. I wonder, is there anything left on the table maybe that we haven't talked about that we can anticipate on the horizon, or that's something that both of you would like to see us shift more towards?
Well, I think, in my view, I mean, the advocacy work I've been doing in the game industry for about the past 10 years, I mean, it's obviously very important to me. I mean, the reason I did it, like taking the roles of running the IGDA and the Global Game Jam, is because I want to see positive change happen in this industry. I love the people in this industry. I love their talent. I love everything that they do and who they are. And I want to see them have better working conditions. I want to see them being treated fairly. I want to see better inclusion and diversity in this industry. And we are slowly getting there. Unfortunately, we are in an industry that is struggling with its own maturity. We see that every year with big stories. I mean, you look at the last 3 years, the Riot Games scandal, the Ubisoft scandal last year, the Activision Blizzard issues this year, you know, the list goes on and on. But I think that's all a good thing. I mean, a lot of that is coming from external pressure because there is more public accountability for the behavior of the C-level people at these companies and how they treat their employees and the kind of environment and the climate that they have been allowing to fester within their companies. So fortunately, we're seeing change happen. We're seeing it through a bit of pain, but that's what it takes. You know, the 2 steps forward, 1 step back approach. I think we are seeing that in the game industry right now. I do think a lot of companies, especially in the last 18 months, have really become far more aware of the power of representation, why that is so important to the audiences that they serve. And I think that's happening across a wide spectrum. That's obviously always been important for decades, centuries, et cetera. But I think in just the last 18 months, especially here in the United States, you know, I hate to use this term, but for lack of a better term, I somewhat call it the BLM effect, because of what happened last year in the United States with the murder of George Floyd. That event really was a crystallization for a lot of companies in the game industry and the tech sector that representation is incredibly important. Now I'm frustrated because they should have always realized that it's important, but you know, they suddenly have become more aware of how very important it really is. So I'm seeing incredible efforts, because I work in my culturalization capacity. I work with a lot of companies on helping them define new policies and new approaches to creation, and how can they be more inclusive, not in just their hiring practices, but also in the content that they create, you know, in the audiences that they're trying to reach. And I've seen a very sincere effort now in the last just, you know, 18 18 months or so, a type of sincerity that wasn't there before. And now let's be honest, some of that's being driven by fear because the companies don't want to be called out on Twitter or on social media. But, you know, right now, I mean, other companies are doing it because they know it's the right thing to do. I don't care what their motivation is at the moment. I don't, you know, if it's fear driving them, great, because that means they're still doing what they should be doing. I'm hoping eventually that fear turns into the realization that what they're doing is the right thing. So that it really encourages me, especially here in the US, because, you know, the US, as I think you all know, can be a very insular market in terms of its perception of the world. It's very isolationist at times. And so I think this is one of those punctuated moments of change we've seen in the last 18 months that is very encouraging to me. And I work firsthand with a lot of these companies, like I said, so I'm seeing it happen. So I'm really encouraged by what might happen over the the next few years.
Yeah, I think jumping off that point that Kate so eloquently made, the United States, and I'm just going to come out and say it, it's a capitalist system. So it's a system that does not necessarily fertilize, nurture, or nourish the artists and the creatives, especially the independent ones, the ones that are not sort of contained within a large company or a company that allows them to have a salary and health insurance, right? So that's two very big factors you have to remember about the United States. It's a very difficult environment for people to be solo artists, solo creatives. And to say that this is, I don't think I'm being too dramatic when I say that the funding system is very broken and it's very difficult for independent creators, independent artists, whether you are within the video game industry, the dance industry, the traditional arts industry of sculptures and painting, theater. There are very big players in the funding realm here in the US. You know, there's the big foundations within XR. Unfortunately, the large funder right now is Facebook or Meta or whatever you discuss them as, because they are the ones that have the monopoly around the headsets. And so what I'd like to see in the future, not just for video game industry, not just for XR industry, but for the independent creative here in the US, I would love to see a shift and a change in the funding structure. I would love to see the idea that you can be a successful, financially stable, abundant creative without sort of needing to feel that you are constantly writing grants, without the need to feel that you are constantly struggling against 1,000 other artists for one bucket of money. Or having to potentially go somewhere full-time to be salaried to work on things that you might not be as passionate about in order to survive, quote unquote. So it's a pipe dream of mine, but I think that being an example of continually discussing these points and continually bringing these points up to help raise awareness that there can be a better future in our financial structures is an important part of making that pipe dream sort of become reality one day.
Yeah, really, I see a lot of this as opportunity, right? Like we can certainly frame all of these issues that we're highlighting here as just reality under which we can try to innovate and establish some new protocols and not do the status quo. If I can leave anyone here with a call to action, it's that. I certainly want you all to be innovative and not rely necessarily on previous structure and previous ways of doing things in order to get your stories out there. The thing that has surprised me most in my role at Games for Change is just the creativity when it comes to distribution in particular. And it starts certainly with the story you're telling and with the team you're putting together. But once you've got those two pieces locked down, it becomes a question of actually getting in front of folks. And there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to actually be creative on that spectrum as well. Only a couple minutes left here, and I don't want to go over, Dara. So let's, I think, open up for questions. There were a couple that have been asked and answered in the chat, but I just want to make sure that we don't run out of time.
So thank you for being so conscious of time. Given that we were running a little bit late before due to tech issues, we can keep going. We actually have a break after this, and I think it's more valuable. If it, by the way, fully respecting our speaker schedules, because it's very early for two of them and still the morning for Michaela and myself. If you all have to run, fully understandable. But if we can stay on just a little bit longer, I think it would really be great.
That's good. Yeah, well, I'm just coming up to my last question here, so that works perfectly. Awesome. With everything that we've said and all the context we've sort of tried to lay out succinctly and eloquently, thanks to my two co-panelists, I wonder whether or not we can end on a note where we're thinking through or presenting an example of a team or an experience or a game maybe that we've come across over the last year or two that has maybe really exemplified some of the values that we've talked about. And that could be in a very specific way, right? It doesn't necessarily need to encapsulate all the stuff that we've mentioned. But you know, what have you seen recently that's inspiring you, that is maybe showing you a path towards building this pipe dream that Michaela mentioned early?
Well, I mean, I can speak from one of the things I've seen, and this is more on a global scale, but I've seen it also in the US as well. I mean, I've been very vocal about labor unions and creating collectives, because I do think what it really comes down to build on Michaela's point, which I completely agree with, especially the dynamic as it exists here in the US, is that, you know, it takes a certain amount of leverage on the part of developers, and that leverage doesn't really exist. All of that power structure in terms of the creative ability and the funding is based in corporations, it's based in companies, and a lot of that is because of the system we have here, the economic system. So what you have to do is kind of work around it, and one of the ways around it is labor unions is one way, but oftentimes labor unions, those are based at a company because they're in response to management practices. As we've been, you know, obviously like what's happened at Activision Blizzard, there's people talking about, you know, unionization at Blizzard. But one of the positive trends I've seen, though, is where independent creators have come together and created a collective where they basically set up their own kind of union-like environment where they all agree to certain kind of rates, and they work together to give each other work and to work, you know, bring in clients from different sources. And that has been a model that I've seen growing more and more. I know that existed around the world very prevalently. I've seen it in all kinds of markets, France, the UK, I've seen it in the Middle East and elsewhere. In the US, that idea is a little less, it's a little less prevalent, I would say, but I'm starting to see more and more creators, especially in the game space, do that, especially in a local basis. So like if you have, for example, 5 or 6 small indie companies in a certain local market like Los Angeles or somewhere else, especially in non-urban areas where they're like not as connected to the tech and funding resources, they band together and then they try and find ways to fund themselves where they can distribute that money internally so that everyone can benefit from that collective effort. And I think there's a lot of promise there that I'm seeing. It's you know, even there you run into all kinds of issues around marketing and getting market exposure and all that, but it's a model that I've seen starting to work, that it's promising, at least to me it is.
How about you, Michaela?
Yeah, I actually was a part of a co-op for the last year coming out of the pandemic. This co-op was built around the empowerment of Black imagination and Black storytelling, and I was able to come in as a consultant and help, and then I sort of found myself becoming sort of a part of the team, and the team was like, you're an ally, we'd love to still have you. So the cooperative model definitely works, especially if you have a cooperative model that has a very strong sales arm and has a very strong niche, right? Like we are the best at this, or we do this specifically, because just like the rise in demand for content, there's also a rise in demand for very specific style of content. And so if you can really, you and your collective, or you and your cooperative, or you as an artist can really sort of like etch out your niche, I think that's very key. For example, like I am an independent creative, I am an independent artist, and I can survive here in the US. And I feel very lucky and very fortunate that I can. And I've sort of carved out a very weird niche for myself, which is social impact, nonfiction storytelling, game design within emerging technologies, but as well as like physical interactions. And so that has been my niche, but I also sort of, just like everyone else, have a plethora of things I do to survive as well when work isn't as abundant, and that involves things that might be less glamorous but also help me. So I teach group fitness. You know, I work and build among sort of like a more athletic environment, and I pool into those athletic environments when I need to sort of make extra money. So I think it's making sure you don't have all your eggs in one basket as an independent. If you want to be independent, I think it's also making sure you have those go-to clients. I will say that as scary as Meta Facebook is, they are a great organization to tap for funding. And so I was actually just very recently, I spent a year developing an idea and creating an idea, and finally got it in front of the right people at Meta, Facebook, Oculus, whatever we're calling them. And they are willing to completely fund that multi-year project. So that's one of the multiple projects I'm working on, but I was able to say, like, here's my idea, here's my thought process, put it into a deck, get that deck in front of the right people. And what's great about that project is that it is a creative project. I get full creative rights on that project. Oculus is really just the distributor and the financer of that project. The project is a multi-episode project, so it's not just a one and done, but there's 3 episodes involved. So again, just thinking about longevity. And then also the project is a female creative team, all female directors, all female producers, and the project itself has a feminine look and feel. And we were very clear with Oculus that that was what we were doing. We were also very clear with Oculus, we were not going to shy away from very cultural ideas and bringing in people who represent those cultural ideas to come in and be a part of that project. And so we were able to make our stake in the ground, knowing who we were, knowing what was important to us. And Oculus responded with money, which doesn't happen every day, but I think is a very positive step in the right direction. Is what we're seeing is could be like the next step forward, is if people fight for the things they want, companies are willing to say yes to.
Wonderful. Thank you both for that. I'll mention a couple of my own examples, and I appreciate the labor point in particular. There's a bunch of teams that I think have taken this up upon themselves, really, to start their own companies, collectives, or worker-owned companies, right? We've seen a couple of examples of that. I'm thinking about Co-op specifically, KO_OP. I think Motion Twin is French. They're wonderful as well, and have been doing this for a couple of years. But we're also seeing that movement kind of start spiraling culturally as well, right? So whether or not they actually have the label of a co-op formally, a lot of these lessons and strategies are being heard by indie leadership in general, right? So people like Kitfox Games, for example, I recognize are doing a lot of this work internally with all their studios. I'd also want to maybe just point out to the publishers as well, right? Like I'm seeing a lot more, I'm seeing shorter games, I'm seeing weirder games, I'm seeing stuff that like really leans into niche being cool, and just like, we don't need a game or an experience that taps into everyone's psyche, but if we could get like a really passionate micro community, that can be enough to be sustainable, right? Games like Baseball that came out of the pandemic, which are totally absurdist and would never work maybe pre-COVID, now have a cool opportunity. I'm thinking about publishers as well who are taking a stance here and are just being way more experimental with what they choose to put out. People like Devolver Digital, Annapurna Interactive, Raw Fury, right? The games coming out of these publishers are, I think, really pushing the boundaries. So I certainly would encourage you all to maybe take a look at some of those catalogs and play through some of these shorter experiences that are so strong in their voice and in their presentation that its influence will be undeniable, I think, at a certain point. So it's a bright moment in that regard as well. Okay. Well, with that, I hope it was a valuable conversation for you all. I would love to answer any other questions that have been left unanswered, either in the chat or just from folks who want to raise their hand and talk. Mani, it looks like are you raising your hand, or are you just telling me that it was great? Great. Any other questions?
I have a couple.
Yes, please.
I again, please, anyone jump in. If you'd rather write your question down, you can always ask it. Thank you so much, Kate. Kate just left her contact information. There's several questions in here that I'm noticing a pattern, whether it's between women and representation in the industry, or it's talking about collectives. And it seems like there's a larger question about how do these different teams work with each other and find one another. And I think community is so crucial here. Michaela really emphasized that because as independent creatives in the United States, I myself am one too. Michaela and I actually have, I think, a lot in common with our backgrounds. Well, she might be a dancer and I certainly am not. I think that in terms of wearing a lot of hats and understanding a lot of different ways in which the industry works and different ways to come into it and find your niche is really crucial. And so in terms of finding these communities, I think that that is very core to being successful in the United States. It's also part of building your audience as an independent creative. So this is something for you all to think about. Here we are on day one, but by the time you come to the US, maybe thinking about different community groups that you've researched in New York that you want to meet with. And you can ask any of us to facilitate some of those introductions on the planning team, myself specifically, just in terms of finding that network where you feel you're going to have support here. Directly related to that, talking about some funding realities, and this was certainly explored in the conversation. But I kind of want to get a sense from our participants, how many of you have applied for grants outside of this one that you're currently using? And again, congrats. How many of you applied before in France or maybe in the United States? Okay, Benjamin. Isabel. You can feel free to turn your mics on as well.
Do you mean on other projects or?
Yes, on other projects.
Oh, yeah.
I want to get a sense of how well this group of people knows about grant applications, because that is a huge reality to be a creator in the United States and to find funding here. Okay, you have as well, Antoine. Okay, it looks like that would be also a really beneficial conversation to have a deeper dive on. Also, sort of going back to our speakers, talking about unconventional games, and if you feel like that's going to have more success than, you know, taking very tried and true and proven success stories like, let's say, RPGs, you know, role-playing games. How would you recommend, when working on unconventional narratives, building a road to success when you're seeing so many other very specific games have success already in more traditional formats?
One of the ways I would answer that question is, I think the key, I mean, obviously there is no way to really predict success with any game. If any of us knew that, we'd probably have a private island somewhere and wouldn't have to be working anymore. But the key I've found that with a lot of games that find their success, especially with non-traditional narratives, or, you know, just exploring all kinds of different concepts or backgrounds that are not traditional to what you would see in, quote, mainstream games, oftentimes they build it on some kind of hook that attracts people to that game. So oftentimes it's either going to be the genre type. So like, we're going to make an RPG, we're going to take this non-conventional narrative, but we're going to make it an RPG because we want to attract people who love RPG, you know, RPGs. Or, you know, RTS, real-time strategy games. We're going to do something that basically appeals to a certain existing wide demographic of game players, and then the task will be getting them, people who love RTS or RPGs, to play our kind of RTS or RPG. That's one tactic I see a lot of indie developers take, where basically they're trying to draw upon people who already love that specific type of game. If they don't do that approach, so if the gameplay itself is very innovative and different, then it's almost the opposite, where then they're trying to find a way to find something about the narrative that is common and widespread, has some kind of widespread appeal to it. So basically, whatever they can find, you know, in the narrative that they think would apply to a lot of people. Like part of it, maybe it's something about a certain aspect of the human experience. Well, that's not too hard because we're all humans, so we can find a way, you know, and that's not too much different from all other creative media like films and television, where they have to do the same thing, you know, where they have to basically base their appeal and marketing either on what the narrative is about or how the narrative is told, like what kind of story, the genre type. So that would basically be, those are usually the two techniques that I see used a lot.
I think it's interesting because the game industry is so big and has been around for so long. And when I say so long and so big, I'm speaking to it relatively to the XR industry. It's not as big and has not been around as long as maybe film or photography, but comparatively to the XR industry, it's much bigger and it has been around much longer. There's definitely like a specific a tactic around the audience, because there is an audience around all these different types of games. With XR, it's a little bit of a question, right? Especially if you're working within VR. It's like, who has a headset? Who with a headset would want to watch this? Why would they want to watch this? Do we even know the demographic around who owns a headset in the US? We really don't, because Meta, Facebook, Oculus likes to keep a lot of their stuff under wraps, their demographic information under wraps, the number of headsets they've sold under wraps. They give us a little bit of information. So it's, again, going back to this idea of a puppy, like especially with VR, especially with AR, like you have to think about not just buying the puppy or not just getting the project out the door, but also all the aspects around that, right? Like who are you partnering for activations with VR headsets so a specific audience can see it in VR? You can't just rely on the Oculus store to be like, I've got a game on the Oculus store, like I've made it, like not necessarily. And that's why VR tends to be a little more difficult, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just letting you all know it does tend to be a little harder to have your piece or your project seen outside of the very bubble space of film festivals, right? Outside of South by Southwest, outside of Sundance, outside of Tribeca, outside of Venice Biennale, outside of all of them and any of them that you can name that have VR. I don't see a lot of other VR experiences have a lot of success in the mainstream without a very clear distribution strategy. So for example, Myriad has a VR experience, it has a 2D element, it has a WebXR element. They're also partnering with a lot of cultural institutions. So it's not just about the VR, it's a larger ecosystem of content that has VR embedded in it. So that is one extra thing you kind of have to think about when it comes to headset-based experiences and projects. Sorry, I know I see a hand.
Yeah, Benjamin, jump in.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I didn't know if it was okay to raise a hand.
Okay. Yeah, totally.
All right. To react to some of the things that you just said, you mentioned a lot of games tackling big issues like diversity and representation. And our project is addressing another deep-rooted power structure, which is belief in growth and economic development, perpetual economic development. So basically criticizing a little bit capitalism. And we were wondering if you knew some projects doing the same, and how would they hook, as you said, the audience? Should we be very discreet about the true nature of the project and let it be revealed during the gameplay? Should we market it as, okay, we are here to destroy capitalism? I don't know if it's clear. I hope it was. And thank you very much for the answer.
So I think it's going to depend on the audience, right? Any stance on this issue will segment your audience, and that's fine. I would say lean into that. It's a great question. I'm thinking about it a lot recently. I mentioned one that I think is relevant, which I just put in the chat, blazeball.com. It's a web game. It's an absurdist baseball simulation, which is a sport that we play in the US. The creators have a very anti-capitalist stance, and that is not necessarily explicit within the game, certainly not at the beginning. But what's wonderful about it is that the game runs on week-long cycles where players, viewers, me, are able to bet on games and then influence the rule structure of the game at the end of a season, right? So we're changing it as it goes along. And you see kind of these anti-capitalist narratives pop up between a couple of the characters that are being run by this AI simulation. And the community leaned into it, right? And it's suddenly become like a hallmark and a staple of what it means to be a part of this community and what it means to celebrate some of the work that comes out of this game. So, you know, that audience has wholeheartedly embraced that aspect of it, and I think is like a touchstone for it, and one that would certainly change the experience if it was missing or was left to be less explicit. So, you know, maybe that's one anecdotal example, but certainly the one that comes up to mind, and one that I think has been relatively successful, especially since they launched as like they launched in beta last year with no monetization, right? It was essentially an alpha build that they were pushing out to be live and get some testing around. And they're doing more experimentation in the next couple of weeks as well. But now they're thinking about, okay, well, how do we actually make this a product? Which of course is exactly to your point. Anybody else with different thoughts there?
I don't mind adding, I mean, that kind of conversation is one of the things I have a lot with game developers because of my culturalization work, because my whole culturalization job is basically to adapt the core creative vision and make sure that can translate not linguistically but culturally to different markets around the world. And so when you're dealing with criticisms of systems or political systems, economic systems, whatever it might be, obviously you have to be really careful with that. I mean, that really comes back to what you as a creator, what your real goal is. I mean, do you want to just kind of double down on the message you're trying to make, you know, make it really clear that this is our stance, this is what the game is about? Or like a lot of game developers do, they wrap the issue that they're very adamant or passionate about in allegory, so that we use allegory as a way to basically transmit that story or transmit that concept that you are very passionate about, but in a way that's a little more digestible to people, because they may not want to play the game if, like, this is an anti-capitalist game, I'm not going to play this. But if you feed it to them, you know, with a sugar-coated pill, you know, I've worked on a lot of major titles, like in Dragon Age, for example, in that series, there's a lot of commentary we put in that game about inclusion, about immigration, about racism. A lot of things are in that game, but we wrapped it in a fantasy allegory, and the relationship between the races, like the humans and the elves and all that. And so BioWare has been a very progressive company in terms of being socially vocal about issues that they are passionate about, but they wrap it in a form of allegory so that the wide, you know, huge spectrum of players who love playing Dragon Age, not all of them are going to get it right away. But if they think about what's happening in the story and in that narrative, they will unveil for themselves. They'll understand that this is what the message is really about. And so that's one way I see a lot of game developers trying to do it. But that's really, you know, you as a creative artist, you have to decide, like, how obvious do you want to be? Because, you know, to Raul's point, you will, if it's really obvious, you will instantly polarize who your audience is going to be.
And I think it's a question of like, oh, sorry, go ahead, Raul.
Sorry, I just wanted to mention real quick, on Kate's point, right? The one tactic here also is comedy or satire, which we're seeing really be leveraged in great examples like the ones that I listed. Say No More, Golf Club Wasteland, Donut County. I think all of them have this sort of angle that might be interesting for you to take a look at, Benjamin.
And I think that it really depends on how you want the game to live, because the game can live as, like Kate said, an allegorical, creative representation of what you're trying to say. But the game doesn't just represent itself within the game, right? There's so many other avenues you publish this game, like the website for the game, the social media handles for the game. And you can have what I call an impact campaign, like a broader impact strategy where you make it well known to the people what your game is about, or you make it well known what's important to you as a creator, but you will allow the game to exist as its own creative standalone. Versus, obviously, I've done pieces where you just straight up say, hey, this is a project about kids who swim to school in the Philippines. This is a reality a lot of children deal with. And then you showcase that to them, right? And that's okay too. That within of itself is a project that's meant for social impact and is very clear about its social impact. So it's playing with your vocal voice as a creator, like everyone else has said. It's also being strategic with the way you work with the digital reality. And that's like my favorite part of what's happening now is like, You can have a whole fan base on Twitter that's just an anti-capitalist fan base that's based on the community you've built from just the game. And that's a kind of a subsection of that digital reality you're creating for yourself, and so on and so on and so forth.
And I think audiences are increasingly looking for that too, right? They don't just necessarily want the game and for it to live on its own. They want to know how it was made. They want to know who the creators are. They want to really have a view towards who these artists are that they're consuming and really understand their perspective. So that's another opportunity for you to really take a stance there.
And I would just add that I feel it's extremely important that we do take a stance, because I think games, it's the only way that games are ever going to mature as a creative medium and be seen on the same cultural impact level as film, television, literature, art. You know, we have to be able to speak our minds and use games as a form of opinion. And so far, games have been really, really reluctant to do that, because we tend to run ourselves as more of a toy business where we're putting something out there where everyone can have fun with it. Well, they don't, games are far more complex than that. And so I really encourage people, you know, if you feel passionately about making your game about a specific subject, then don't modify that. Stick to your creative vision, you know, and you are going to have to modify how that creative vision gets out to the world and who's going to play it, but that's up to you to decide, like, how much revenue do you really care about making versus being true to your creative vision. But I really feel strongly that we have to keep being, you know, being very vocal and being very, I guess, blatant about what we want to say in our games, because otherwise this medium's never going to mature.
Wonderful note to end on. Kate, thank you so much. And thank you, Michaela, also for joining. Thank you, Dara. Thank you, all participants. It was wonderful to be here with you all today. I hope you enjoy your break and hope we get to see some more of the work that comes out of this amazing program. I'll certainly be following closely.
Yes, thank you all so much for attending today and speaking. Raul, for coming up with this panel discussion and wanting to have this conversation. I think it's a great idea. And also, Kate and Raul, just for being awake. It is, again, very early on the West Coast right now. Thank you, Michaela, for also making time in your morning. I think this was such a great conversation to kick off this program between the realities of both industries and also the wonderful things, as Raul was saying, the opportunities that we have here. So thank you all. I hope the three of you have a wonderful day. The rest of us will stay on for a few more minutes, but feel free to go and continue on with whatever you need to do. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I'm so glad that we had this conversation. That talk, that session, I think really set the tone for the rest of the week in terms of really incredible minds and professionals who know their way around gaming and or XR. Some people will be of both worlds. And we will be in sessions for the next 4 days that are similar to that have a casual tone. You can ask questions in the chat. Feel free to jump in. All of our speakers want to have these open conversations with you. Some of their talks will look a little bit different. Some will have presentations that they'll bring. Others will just want to have more of an open Q&A and dialogue. And I hope everyone gets more comfortable with just jumping in and talking with them directly, because they want to help you be successful here. I'll pause for a moment before we take a 5-minute break. Or actually, we only have 18 minutes left before the end of today. Would you rather just stay on for the rest of the 18 minutes or take a break and then come back for 10?
It's okay for me.
To stay?
Let's stay.
Okay, great. I like to be conscious of the fact that 3 hours of digital programming can be heavy. So we'll stagger in more breaks for the rest of the week. But yes, I think that this was absolutely great. I'm really happy with what they shared. And thank you all for asking questions. I want to take the rest of our day today to reflect on needs and wants for all of you to accomplish while being part of digital playgrounds. So right now it's about goal setting, as is on the agenda, thinking about what you each want and need to find this program to be successful for you. So I did take notes on everyone's presentation when you were speaking before, whether it was about script writing or looking at game mechanics, but I'd like to have an open conversation about that, especially based on the conversation that you just heard. Feel free to just jump in and talk. I want to set that tone casually.
Personally, I already mentioned the distribution aspects, and they've talked about it a lot, plenty. So that's plenty of ideas and leads that I can start building a community for the project when I come in February. So I think it's a very good, for me, it's a very good direction, and maybe help build an actual strategy for that. Understanding what I need in order to make this happen, basically. Also, because Michaela mentioned that maybe a VR project requires some other pieces of content. And so this also requires maybe some additional funding. So this is actually a big, big deal. So, yeah.
Yeah, same. As I'm also presenting a VR project, I've been very careful about what you said about creating other pieces of media besides the XR experience. So Isabelle, I feel the same. And I also want to add that I actually have no idea how much what I'm wanting to do costs. As I've said in my presentation, I've always done my projects myself, or when it's for a client, it's a completely different structure. But now I'm very curious about how much does it cost? How much should I ask? And then find partners in order to make that. And I want to learn how to write a story, a compelling one. Voilà.
Okay. So in terms of story development, I've heard a few of you, of course, bringing that up, which is a core part of digital playgrounds. And as we build out the in-person program, it's top of mind for Cami, myself, and the rest of the producing team to make sure that we're giving you the most valuable sessions as possible so that, again, you walk away feeling like you're going to have the network to come back to the US or to build this out further. So for storytelling, you all have very different projects. Some of you have very literal storytelling in terms of wanting scripts and dialogue and character building. Some of you have less conventional story needs in terms of more innuendo, and there's more subtlety, and it might be more about the way in which a player moves through your world. So any other information about how we can fulfill the need to get your story written in the right way is very helpful for us when you get here in New York. Are you thinking of more world building? Is it more about how do you do dialogue for characters? I'm curious.
As far as I think for the narrative part, I think we need more help for the structure, like to have the right basis for writing the story, because I think the dialogues after that, I mean, it's up to each one more or less, but each author. But we need to have the good structure and not to make too many mistakes so that we have to rewrite everything after some time.
Yeah.
So probably a lot of writing tools and story structure sessions would be beneficial. Great.
As you mentioned, also some world building time. We need to complete the world we started to build also, I think.
I think it's very cool how everyone's project is so visual. I feel like all of your projects have a very clear feeling and tone visually. So I would love to find the right writers to come in and partner with each of you to get the story end of each of your projects to the next level so it matches the visuals.
Also, what would be really nice instead of en plus than dialogues would be how to make your story coherent. Your words, as you said, we all have strong words and images and some sort of a strong vision of what we want, but how to make this everything coherent and structured would be nice, I think.
Awesome. Also, part of the program, and we will have a session on this week, will be about marketing. Michaela touched on that a lot in terms of marketing and distribution. We will hear from people later in the week who will discuss that, and also funding. But when you come to New York, Valerie in particular wants us to set up marketing sessions where each of you will sit down with a marketer and really go into how do you talk about your project? What does your project sound like? Mani's project is going to be so different from Melanie's project. They're going to sound differently. When you look at them on social media, they're going to feel and read differently. So how do you come up with that? And I think that that is part of a larger conversation about the cohesion that Melanie just brought up. Great. Okay, so these are all fantastic notes that I have down. Any other needs or thoughts that you can think of? Mm-hmm.
For me, it's like Michaela said, my question is how to create a great community around the project, how we can communicate, in which platforms, and also how to create a community. So.
I was thinking as well for when you're in New York, having a professional community manager come in. So someone who on a slightly larger indie team or at a big studio would run the social media accounts, would know how to engage with the audience and speak directly toward them. This is a good moment for me to bring back up Discord. Has everyone used Discord before? Are you familiar with it? Okay.
I want to ask a question. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I just want to ask that if we can show the whole adventure when we were at New York in the social media.
Do you mean, can you document your experience on social media?
Yeah, I want to share with my community, like as an artist, and I want just to share what the whole travel and also the steps of my work. I don't know. I ask if we can do that or not.
Something actually Cami and I were discussing briefly in terms of like having an official Instagram account for this, or Valerie earlier brought up the Villa Albertine, and so promoting it through there. I think as a personal, account that you have, it would make sense for you to document your experience. I don't see an issue with that. If any, I think that would come down to consent from anyone else just being recorded. But if no one else has an issue and you're capturing little moments of your day, I think that is fine. Does anyone have an issue with that? Great. We also plan to have videographers and photographers on set.
Okay, cool.
They won't be popping up everywhere, but they will be recording sessions, especially because you are the first group ever experiencing digital playgrounds. And we want this to continue, and we want to promote it in the future. So we will be documenting it.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I just have a remark because I think what I really like is that it's a diversity of projects and that everybody has a very different format, and and especially I think my project maybe is the less of a game traditionally than maybe other projects also in the group, which is really interesting for me, obviously, and I want to learn more about all this. But I guess I would be really interested in also meeting people who are maybe more from the art world, from curators or the artists, and that work at the intersection, you know, between different disciplines, and not only come from the game industry, you know, or and can feed something else to the project. I would be really happy to, you know, confront a choreographer, for instance, to the nature of a project, or a screenwriter, or bring someone from different industry, actually, you know, and think about how we can make something new. Because obviously I don't want to talk only for myself. Maybe that's a separate conversation that we can have, you know, but I think that I would be super happy to try to invent a form for this, and so maybe to bring people from different industries, basically, and maybe try to meet specific people in New York, but also this week, you know, not having only people from maybe people from performing arts, or from the cinema industry, who could, you know, share something different, you know, and bring new ideas. Because I think the concept also is to invent a format in a way, you know, and not only, I mean, for me, actually, it's not really about gaming, even if I love games, and I would be super happy to try to include some of these ideas, but, you know, leave some space also for other forms to emerge. I don't know what you think.
Sure.
Yeah,
I think it's a great point. And the reality for many of us as artists and creators is that we are interdisciplinary. I brought before briefly when Raul, Michaela, and Kate were here, and Michaela is a great example of that. She's a professional dancer, she's a fitness instructor, and she works in X art and storytelling. And we've known each other for several years. She somehow manages to put them all together, and it's so impressive and so cool. So that all to say, I think not only does your question make sense, but also it's very in line with a lot of the skill sets of these people. Throughout this week, we are having professionals that are specifically working in gaming and/or XR, but the majority of them have very unconventional backgrounds. And I've asked everyone to be open about their background professionally, whether they came from one discipline and then moved into gaming, and how they reference that background and how it benefits them to be someone that works in game development or in XR creation. And in particular for immersive technology, I think so many of us do have very unconventional backgrounds anyway, because the industry is so new. So absolutely, in New York, when you arrive, we can take all that into consideration, because we're in the process now of confirming speakers for New York City in a few months. So this is why, again, I want you all to feel like you can ask us for what you need. We want you to be successful. Because this is such a small group of participants, we can really work with you to make those things happen. Something else that actually Melanie brought up in the chat, she asked if we can tap into MoMA. I think it'd be great, and Cami and I were discussing this a couple of weeks ago, like where we want to take you all when you're in New York City, because we can do little field trips and stuff and go to different places. And of course, you'll have the month there, so you can do that on your own too. But places like MoMA, museums or institutions to really inspire you are so appropriate for this program. So I would love to share those experiences with you. We will plan that accordingly, but feel free to ask us for those things and we'll do our best to make them happen. And additionally, part of this program, as you know, is that you will all be mentored when you're in New York City. And if now you start thinking about who you want to be in conversation with, I can start arranging that. Basically, Cami handles all of your logistical needs and communications to the participants. I do the same to the speakers. So if you start telling me people like, I really want to talk to someone at this game studio, I'll do my best to make sure that happens. So in the case of Melanie, you want to connect with someone at MoMA, I'll see who is within my network or the embassy's network in order to try to connect you personally or bring them in as a speaker to benefit everyone. Mm-hmm. But in the case of you, Antoine, if you want someone who's a scriptwriter in the film industry, and that's more of a specific need for your project, we can make that happen, that one of your mentorship dates, or basically you'll sit with them over coffee or something. We'll make sure that that person can meet with you and can fulfill that need in question. So work with us to figure out what you need, and we will do our best to program that accordingly.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that would be amazing. And I think, you know, for me, and I'm sure other people will be interested also, like curators from MoMA, from the Museum of Moving Images, from different institutions in New York that are actually looking for this kind of experiences, you know. That would be really amazing. Yeah.
So
but I can make a list.
yeah, feel free. That really, I mean, I have lists and lists of names myself for my own network. But if there are people that you specifically want to try to talk to, we can use where we as programmers uniquely stand and leverage the embassy to try to connect with them and try to bring them as part of this program. And the sooner I know that, the better. You all, by the way, can of course reach out to people when you're in New York on your own. But if you feel like it will not be as easy to connect with them without the authority of the embassy, we will handle that. Just because it might be a little easier. And other places, like if any of you were interested in visiting FIT, which is the Fashion Institute of Technology, it's a, Melanie's so excited. It's a university for fashion students. If that would help you maybe with character design, we can think unconventionally about things like that. Or if you want to attend a lecture at a university in New York at NYU, we can find a way to maybe have you meet there. Like one of my colleagues runs the School of Digital Storytelling at Columbia University, and that's very focused on new media and VR. And I know Digital Playgrounds is very, half of the programming is about gaming, but we're going to do our best to make sure that everyone feels fulfilled, even if some talks are not as relevant to some projects. We're hoping everyone is excited to learn together. And then other things like there's an institution called Baby Castles, which is a retro gaming museum run by volunteers. And it's like this weird little tucked away place that you can go have cocktails at and play arcade games. We'll do stuff like that. It's going to be all over the place. Awesome. I know we're at time now, and I have to run because I still have another 6 hours in my workday. Does anyone have any questions or final comments for myself, for Cami? And I think Lena is still on the line. We're really your core team right here between Cami and myself, and then Lena will be helping us until the end of December when she's done her internship.
Yeah, we had maybe one quick point. Wondering if there was any work sessions planned within ourselves. That way we can react and maybe work on some specific issues that some project has, maybe regularly. We are proposing this because we are currently working on script writers sessions like this over the course of 4 months, and it's proven pretty useful to immerse ourselves in the projects of others and to be able to launch some feedback or do some creative problem solving on one specific issue. So yeah, I don't know if it's planned or not.
Are you referring to this week or are you referring to New York?
No, more generally, especially in February, I guess, because we could have more time to do this.
Let me get a quick check from everyone here. I'm going to quickly share my screen before we have to hop off. So let's go to day 2 tomorrow. And can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Great. So you can see, can I see my screen? Okay. You can see that at the beginning of each day, we have 10 minutes for a creativity prompt. So that is basically a prompt that I would share with you. Cami and I were drafting them. And it would be a reflection on your project. Like, how do you really want to define your character? How do you think that you should sound when promoting yourself on social media? Things that are working up to how do you build out this project from different angles. So we can do that in the morning. That's 10 minutes, kind of just a free writing, brainstorming. And then at the end of each day for the next 4 days, you have 40 minutes, if you see down here, of free writing sessions where you kind of go back and you're brainstorming, thinking about what you learned, because we're doing 3 sessions of speakers every day. And then the other 20 minutes is an open, so it's 40 minutes of just open dialogue between all of us, kind of like what we're doing right now. If you want to modify that to have a different, I don't know, a different agenda, we can do that. We could do something like what Benjamin is suggesting, where, you know, maybe Isabel is like, I'm really thinking through this. What do you all think? Because we're all professionals here, and then everyone can give her feedback. How do you want to spend that time? I thought writing sessions and reflection would be helpful, but I'm happy to change it.
Maybe to clarify, I wasn't necessarily advocating for changing what we are doing this week. I was maybe thinking about February, when we can be all in the same room, kind of a writer's room, and maybe some tasks. But it depends also on the other participants' will to do that, because it takes a little time to get immersed in each other's projects. But I think it could be useful if we have some spare time, and if everybody is willing to do it, or even a part of everybody is willing to do it, we can find some time to try to solve one problem once we are all in the same room in New York. Possibly it could be useful. Sorry, I wasn't trying to change the program for this week. I wouldn't dare. But,
I wasn't thinking that you were. It was more of an opportunity this week that we could do that. We could have those writing sessions be more community focused instead of more solo. So it's honestly whatever you all feel would best benefit the group. But to answer your question also about New York, over the course of the one intensive week, as a quick reminder, you will all be in sessions that will be longer, about 7 to 8 hours a day, of different talks. Guests are coming in, we might be visiting places, but that will also incorporate different workshop sessions and working together, whether that's being led by someone or it's being led by the group. So those will be built in. And then for the other 3 weeks that you're in New York, or 2.5, that will be you running around, setting up meetings, meeting with mentors, and having coffee that we will arrange, etc. So that will be part of it, yes. And thank you for asking. Does anyone else have any thoughts on what I shared before about changing any of the schedule for the writing sessions? Does that all feel like good, valuable time in how it's been scheduled? Yay, okay, good. All right, awesome. We are 6 minutes over, so we can end now. But again, any final question or comment? I want to make sure we end day one on a good note.
Oh, that's okay.
Great, thank you. And thank you to Cami, thank you to Lena. I can't believe today is finally here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tomorrow.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.